Is this thing on? Damn, that music is a bit low compared to my voice. I hope I didn't jump scare anybody. Right, have I got everything ready? Is everything ready to go? It's this one. Can I just close that? Save the changes even though I've finished with that file. Okay. Welcome back, boys and girls. We're now moving on in the Bitcoin Baron Streamer Bible series to course 2 of the 3-part course. You know, this whole learning experience is 3 courses, which we'll go over that in a little bit. This is going to be using Blender. As it says on the thing there, you need a copy of the Blender program, which can be found right there. Hold on, I need a drink. Is my sound loud? I feel like my sound isn't all that loud. I've turned it up a little bit, even though it's fairly low and quiet in the background. Okay, so the instructions are there. You can download Blender directly through Steam, which is really pretty cool. So where is the, hold on, let me just check a thing real fast. Let me just check a thing. Right, that needs to be off, because otherwise it's going to go straight into break, which we don't want. What's group 5? That's irrelevant right now. Okay, so apologies for the later start. It's all my own fault for bad timekeeping and everything. But hey, who isn't like that? Right, so let's get into it. Let's have a look at what we've got in store tonight. It's going to be fun. I'm very excited to show you all this stuff because Blender is free. Blender is, well, it's not easy to learn. But when you know how to use it, like, I was just running through this tutorial last night, and then I got an inspiration for an idea, for a really simple idea of something. And I just tried it, and it worked pretty well. In fact, no, I won't show that because I don't want to overload you with too much. Right, so. Okay, this first session, right, the whole session is here. We're going to just have a little recap of what's coming up in the Blender course. There's going to be more modules in this because there's a lot more to teach than there was in the first course. So be ready for that. However, approach these at your own pace. If you're watching on YouTube, feel free to stop at any point and have a bit of a break. I don't recommend going through all of these videos if you're going through it on the YouTube playlist back to back. But for anyone that's just tuning in on the live stream, you can... That's not working. Oh, wait, no, because I spelt it wrong. There we go, that's better. You can find the playlist there if you're watching on the Twitch chat. I've just posted it in the thing. So, I'm not actually going to do the demo. The quick 15-minute demo part from the beginning, I'm not actually going to do. So I'll take that out right now. And we'll get straight onto the thing. Because otherwise, I may as well start you off like looking at it and learning it rather than going through what we're going to do, then going back and explaining the basics of the interface, and then going through and doing the follow-along tutorial afterwards. This first session as well, I'm expecting is going to be less. Mind you, I did expect the streamer tip session from last week to only be about 2 hours, and it was nearly 4. So we'll see how it goes. Anyhow. So everything's all there. You can see what's going to happen. It's going to be a little simple one. But by the end of this, you'll be able to make your own scenes and you'll understand how to render stuff in Blender. And you'll be able to use basic shapes and materials and textures, which is pretty cool. So, hold on. Let me try and make sure that this is a seamless transition. That's there. Okay, so let's see if this is seamless. It probably isn't, but let's see. Right, so this is the course so far. The video presentation is almost mute, so that's good. So those are the courses that run. Right, we don't need to let this whole thing play out. So if I click on here, I can advance it. This is all the stuff we've done. We've done the OBSGod course. If you've not seen it, you should go back and watch those videos. If you're watching on YouTube, you should be able to find a playlist not too far away with all of the videos in of all that stuff there. But we're on to Blender now. Right, so this first session is just going to be a crash course in using Blender and getting to grips with the basics of stuff and the interface. It's got to be pretty simple, but we've got some more advanced stuff coming up, like we're going to have some overlay art projects, which we're going to be doing in the next session. And that's going to be like you design your own graphical overlays that are on your stream. And there's got to be hopefully two anyway, different graphics that we're going to do. The first one's going to be kind of simple, but then the second set is going to be a bit more in depth. And we're not just going to be designing these graphics, we're going to be putting them inside of OBS as well. So that could be good. I don't know if that'll be too long for one tutorial session or not. I'm unsure. We're going to be talking about animations and loops and modifiers and basic texturing in Module 3. And then Module 4, we've got some fun stuff like particle systems, like this stuff that's on the screen now. And then Module 5 is actually what's on the screen now. It's the Rainbow Shapes project. It's just going to be doing some funky background animations, maybe for your Be Right Back screen or something like that. It's not just about making the graphics that you see here, I'll explain it more in a minute. And also we're going to be dealing with simulations like water simulations, fire simulations, flags, other stuff, like different colored fire, all kinds of fun stuff. And then geometry nodes as well. We're going to have a course on that, and that's where you can make things like that cityscape, which you see in the little thingy there. So it's going to be a very fun time. A very fun time indeed. So let's skip ahead on this video. Oh yeah, and there's a sneak peek, you'll have to pause it if you want to see it, of what we're going to be doing in Course 3. That's where we're going to be integrating some more advanced streamer software behind the scenes to make things even better. So, as heretofore, each session is going to be made up of 2 slices of teaching. There's going to be, like we're in now, we're in the intro. Why is this taking forever to get through this animation? Then we're going to have the first tutorial session right here. Then in the middle, we're going to have a break, and during that break, people can ask any questions if they have any. If you have any questions while we're doing the follow along bit and you get stuck somewhere and you're watching in the live stream, please feel free, because that's going to be in the tutorial session 2, please feel free to ask, and we'll have another section for any questions at the end as well. So rules, like it says here, during the main tutorial segments, I'll only answer questions really about what's going off. I don't want to go off into little one-on-one conversations with which lots of people that are maybe watching aren't going to be very interested in. There's going to be no redeems during the stream. They are all off, right? Yeah, well, except for the basic ones. Any unrelated questions can be asked in the question segments at the beginning, the middle, just in the break time, or at the end. And please be civil. Some people may have questions that you figured out. Not everyone learns the same, and I am very good at forgetting to explain things. What else have we got here? Have we got any more bits? Oh no, thanks for your attention. That's the bit at the end. And this animation itself, which you're looking at, and it is an animation, well, it's not animated right now. Well, that's the end of the video, so it's not animated anymore. That was all produced in Blender. And as well, this background animation right here, including that floating, moving around text in the middle, was also done inside of Blender. I mean, I could even make a sort of like a background animations module where we just do some background animations like that one there, because that one there is quite funky. It's quite a nice little thing you could have in the background of your stream, I guess. It's something to consider. We'll see how I feel. But like I say, I'm very excited to be teaching this to you today. It is going to look complicated, but it's not actually going to be complicated, hopefully. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so we have here something along the lines of, I've got a text-based logo. This is a finished product here, which we're going to be working towards. Hopefully by the end of this video, you'll have produced something like this. Now, you may be looking at this and thinking, I don't like the style of that. I would have those things different colors and I'd probably have a different font and some other stuff. This is just an approximation. It's not about saying you could have this as your background thing. It's about teaching you how this thing is done and how the techniques of making the shapes, applying the materials, sorting out this really weird reflective thingy here, and getting some glowing text and everything, and, you know, teaching you the things about that. So don't worry too much if this doesn't look like your particular cup of tea. You don't have to follow along when we get to the follow along bit, one-to-one exactly. So before we get into it, it's important that you're using the right Blender version. I'm on version, as it says down here, 3.4.1. And if you have Steam, you can download this. For instance, on Steam, you can get Blender here, and you can download it through Steam. However, I am going to be using a set version of this. The reason for this is so that everyone can have this version, and everything that I do that people can follow along with, they can do it. Blender gets updated pretty regularly, and sometimes things change and sometimes things are deleted, so I decided to go with this version because it's not the latest one. So you might not have it saying Blender 3.4 in brackets there. Once it's downloaded Blender through Steam, you can go right click Properties, and then you can go to Betas here, and you can change it to be version 3.4 stable, like that. I don't actually need to because it's already on that. However, if you don't want to run it through Steam, I've got like nearly 2,500 hours easy on this. If you don't want to do it through Steam, you can go to this website here, which is blender.org, and I don't think you want to hit the, oh yeah, you want to hit the, oh no, you want to hit up here where it says previous versions at the top up here. And if you, oh Jesus, that's a very white screen. And then click on where it says all previous versions download here. And that's even whiter. Sorry for the white background jump scare right there. Well, it's not, it's more of an eye scare, but I'll use jump scare because it makes more sense. And Blender 3.4 right there, you can click on that. And there are installers for Linux, Mac, Windows, and some other things. So it's 3.4.1 that we're on. So if you're on Windows, you'd probably want to get either, is it going to be the x64? Apparently it's the x64 version anyway. Okay. That feels concerning, but I'll just leave that there. And you can figure that out hopefully. It's not a big download. It's not a big, if I look at how much Blender is using, local file, it's 902 megabyte, but that's its installed size. That's not how much the download is. I think the download's only a couple hundred megabytes. In fact, I literally just closed the, oh no, I didn't. Oh, back to the white jump scare. 3.4, the download. Oh, it's in bytes. What the hell? Who even uses bytes anymore? I'm guessing it's around about 200 to 300 megabytes, more or less. So that's that, and I'll get rid of that. And that's all good. So, the Blender crash course, let's get into it, because I've been live for about 20 minutes and we haven't really done anything yet. So, when you first load up Blender, I'm going to say goodbye to this right now. When you first load up Blender, it probably looks something like this. Now, there's a lot of buttons here, a lot of buttons here, and lots of things here. What does all this stuff mean? It's all right. Don't get overwhelmed with how complicated it looks. We're going to build you up from the very basics, and things will start to make sense. You can resize these little panels. Each of these little sections, like this here, this big thing here, this big thing here, is called a panel. Right, so we're going to go through and have a little explanation about what all of these are. Now this here, oh wait, no, there was one thing I wanted to do. And I'll do this now, before I forget. Whereabouts is it? I'm going to turn on something. It's not going to be as useful. Is it this one? I believe it's this one. Let me try click now. Right, okay. So I've got on a little thing. You see where it says L button there? Because hopefully I'm going to explain everything as we're going through, but I have a tendency sometimes to get on ahead, because a lot of the things that I do inside of Blender, I've done, you know, I've got easily over 5,000 hours of Blender usage. Only half of them are on Steam. Less than half of them are on Steam, actually. But using something so long, obviously there's a little hazard that you might know what you want to do and you might just do it rather than explaining it. So if I'm pressing any buttons or any keys, like if I was to press Shift and A there, it would tell you that I've pressed Shift and A to bring up the add menu. So that's going to be on there, which should be useful for if, as I may do, I forget to mention something. So that's pretty cool. Anyway, so this is Blender. We have all these different buttons. And obviously, what is Blender? Well, it's a 3D graphics program. If I press F12 now, it's going to render. See, it said I pressed F12, and it's rendered this cube, which is right here. And we have this, if I press a numpad 0. Oh yeah, it's much easier to use Blender with a numpad, by the way. I'm going to be using a numpad a lot. And there may be shortcuts around that, but if you haven't got a keyboard with a numpad on, just find one. Just find one. It'll make your life easier. Just buy a cheap one if you have to. You know, it doesn't have to be like a really flashy, expensive one. Just get a cheap one, because there's a lot of different things that you can do with keyboard shortcuts to make things easier, and we're going to be doing a lot of that. So you might find it easier in the long run to have a keyboard like that. Doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't even have to have RGB on it. Although, if you do have RGB on any electronic device, it does make it 50% faster. Everybody knows this. So your keyboard will be 50% faster if you have RGB on it. Just saying. Right then, that's a lie. Just saying. But, okay, so these are the default panels. Now, it doesn't take a great leap of your imagination for you to probably, hopefully, recognize that this is a 3D window where we can look around the scene. So, when you have a file in Blender, you call it a scene. It's a blend file, but you refer to it as a Blender scene because it's not just a landscape. It's not just like whatever kind of thing you might build in Blender, like the physical objects. We got stuff here, like we got a light that's right here. I'm going to change the color on this real quick to make it pink. And now we have a pink cube. Imagine that. Change it again. I'm going to change it to yellow. Now we've got a yellow cube. That's pretty fun, isn't it? You know, another thing, I'm going to subdivide this cube plenty of times like that. So now it's got all these different faces, and then what I'm going to do, just for shits and giggles, is I'm going to warp it and make it different, and now it renders again with like a messed up cube like that. And that was all so very easy. But yeah, a scene contains stuff like your camera, which isn't a real physical or visual object, and the light itself isn't. It casts light which affects physical things, but it's not actually a physical thing. So that's why it's called a scene. So, you may have noticed, if you've been observant, that when I've been clicking on this stuff around here, these two panels have been changing. So let's move on to these panels. Right, so this panel here is called the outliner. It's literally just a list of all the objects in your scene. And you might think right now that that's pretty pointless, which it is, because we've only got 3 things right here. But I can click on this list and it will highlight and select whatever I've clicked on here. Like I've just clicked the camera and now it's picked that up. And yeah, it is pretty pointless. It's, well, not pointless, but it's almost pointless in a scene where we've only got a few things. But imagine you've got hundreds of objects and this scene isn't just full, it goes down and off the page. Then this is a bit more useful for finding stuff. Like if we had a whole bunch of cubes here of different kinds of cubes, but we wanted to select this one, this list would maybe be full. We could probably just click on it. If we gave the cube a name, maybe we should call this cube Richard. Yeah, I'm going to call this cube Richard. Why not? So I'm going to double click here and change its name to Richard, just to remind myself that that is indeed Richard. Okay. So that's what that panel does. This panel down here is a bit more interesting, and it's one that's very, very important. So when you click on stuff, you'll have seen big changes in what it's showing down there, right? But there's these icons here. So how this works is this is the properties panel. And the properties panel is where you can do properties for stuff like this camera here. If I press this button, don't worry, you don't have to be following along right now. Don't worry about keeping up. You don't have to follow along. I'm just demoing and explaining what you can do. In here, there's something called a focal length. It's like a zoom factor. And if I zoom this right in and then render it again, you can now see that the image it's made is the same cube, but it's much more zoomed in like that. And that's just one of the many properties that are on here. We could even add a depth of field. Let me just see. If we add a depth of field and we tell it that the, where is it? The depth of field settings are here. And if I take the f-stop down so everything gets really blurry, and then I move it so it's like this, now we have a cube that's got a depth of field effect on it. Like that, and then we render it out and it looks like that. That easy to do stuff like that. So let's go through these buttons, because each of these buttons here is like, opens up a different panel section. So we'll click on the cube here. So now what we've got here is, you'll notice that these top things, first off, these top 5 things, I don't know what that is. Collection properties. I don't know what that is. I'm going to tell you right now. I think I know what it is, but I don't want to teach you something that's wrong. And we're not going to be worrying about collections for some considerable time. And this thing up here is, ignore it. It's not a real one. It's not a proper one. Right then. So this first section here is render properties. These top 5 here are things to do with your scene and how the camera and everything's rendered. It's not to do with the object that you've got selected. So this is where you can select the render engine, and we'll talk about a little bit more about that in a minute after we've gone through all this. It's where you can set settings to do with the quality of the rendered image, and you can turn on various effects like ambient occlusion or bloom, for instance. Bloom's not going to do anything because the light isn't very bright, so just bear with me a second. I'm going to make it much more intense if I can. Let me make the light much more intense. Okay, now we've got bloom. We've got far too much bloom, and the light is the orange light is very, very powerful. So that's the bloom. We'll turn that off and on. Depth of field is already on. Oh, this is to do with the quality of the depth of field. Right. Okay, then. And all sorts of various things. I don't want to get too much into the nitty-gritty of what each section does at the minute. The second one is very important. It's the output panel. It's got an icon that looks like a printer. And this is where you set the resolution of the image, or if you're doing an animation, which you can render out from this program as a movie file, which is pretty good. Hello there, Suspense. Hope you're having a good day. Welcome on in. And you've got stuff like that animation range where it's going to put the file, what kind of file format it is, all cool stuff. This is layers. We'll skip that because I don't care for it. It's not really that important anymore in Blender, unless you're doing some visual effects type stuff. But I'm not really into that. It's never really been an important thing. But here we've got the scene properties, and one important thing here is where you can set what camera you're using. Now, we only have this one camera in the scene. It looks very stretched right now. But if you had multiple cameras, you had like a scene with an animation going off, but then you wanted different cameras at different angles to film different cuts with it, you would have a list of different cameras in there. But we don't have anything that complicated. Probably ever. I mean, by the time we get to the point where we could use that, if you know what you want to do, you'll probably already know how to do it. There's stuff like gravity here. It's very useful in the simulations, but we'll leave the rest of that for now. And then there's the world here, the surface. This section is very important. At the moment, when we zoom in and look through the camera, which is focused too far in, you'll notice when we render it, there's a grey background. Now, I mostly want animations to start with a black background. So if you're the same, just click on this red world properties. Click where it says color here. This is a slider. And bring it down to be absolute black. And now it's only lit up by the light in the scene. What do you like to animate, create? I'm more about patterns and effects rather than stuff animating with like characters and stuff. I've never really got the hang of or been that interested in character animation. I did try it once and I got pretty good, but I haven't used the skills since. I can texture objects though. More like stuff blowing up and like pretty patterns and particle effects and, simulations. That's more my kind of thing. I enjoy that. I've wasted many an hour in this program on that. Right, so where were we? So we'd gone through these 5. These aren't related to the object at hand, but now we've got to go through the rest of them. This orange one here is object properties, so it's to do with the object which we've got selected. In here you've got stuff like location, rotation, and scale. So if I move these around, you'd notice that the cube's moving around. That's because we're changing its location. Funny how that works. Rotation, you can probably guess it turns it around. Scale it up or down, make it squished. Oh, I've inverted it. I've turned it inside out there. Given it a minor scale. So that's pretty good. We've got a modifier panel here, which is very, very interesting. I'm trying to think if there's a way to... hold on. Let's I'm going to go out of this view. Oh yeah, there's the view selector. When you press Z on your keyboard in Blender, it'll bring you up this menu. We're going to be using this a lot. There's 4 various modes. I'm going to discount that one because I don't like it. So we've got wireframe, and as you can guess, it just shows you the edges of all the shapes, and you can see between the edges. So you can see everything. Then there's rendered, which is like what the output would look like. So it gives you a good idea of what your actual end scene would look like. And then the solid, which is sort of like in between, like every shape has a face on it, and all the faces are filled in, so you can't see through stuff. But if you've got a very complex scene with lots of different and intensive materials, which you will have at one point in this tutorial series, this is like a nice go-between for seeing everything in 3D, but not needing to waste time letting it render or compile all the textures. And it's also a bit simpler, but still kind of good. So that is what the Z shading menu is all about, and that's going to be useful. So get used to using that. What next is there? Oh yeah, the modifiers panel. We were talking about this. Now I've just made this a very bumpy, very unusual cube. So one of the modifiers we can use on this is like a list of, it's like, if you've ever thought of like effects that you can apply on audio, like a chorus effect or a echo effect or a reverb effect to make it like there's an echo or something like that. These are effects, but for geometry and shapes. So they're sort of a bit like that kind of thing. That's a good way to think about them. So one thing I could do here is I could actually, you know what, I'm going to go with the wireframe because this is pretty easy. So we've basically made a 3D wireframe from this object now. It looks kind of crazy. In my opinion. So I'm actually going to apply that because I like it. And also another cool thing that you can do, if I add in another cool effect, I'm going to add in a sphere right here. I'm going to make it bigger like this. And then to Richard the Cube, well, he's not a cube anymore, he's more of a cube net. We're going to add a Boolean operator and say difference with the sphere. And then if I make the sphere not appear, wait, did I actually apply the, oh, I did. Union, intersect. All right, for some reason it's having a bad time on that. Oh, wait, there we go. That's what I wanted. Now if I go back to solid view mode and turn off the sphere, now what we've done is we've made it so that the sphere is cutting out anything where the sphere, where Richard, the cube net thing, is inside of the sphere's shape. The parts of Richard that are in that will be deleted. So now it's like that. And a cool thing about this is if I change this like this, don't worry, again, you don't have to follow along. Let me change this so it's just a wireframe. Actually, can I change it so it's just a bounds like that? The great thing is I can move this around in real time and it will recalculate what's up. So you can use this to have animated shapes that pass through other shapes and create holes in them temporarily. It's pretty good. It's pretty unique. I like it. And there's many more in the modifiers thing, which we'll get into. This next one down here is a lot of fun. It's the particle effects section where you can apply particle effects to the objects in your scene. We are going to be doing that a lot later on. You got to walk before you can run. And also we've got physical simulations here, which I can't show you these because these will take a while to set up and they will kill the performance of my PC, which is not going to be good. And then we've got object constraints here. And now this is important. The object constraints, let me delete the sphere because it's affecting Richard, the cube net. It's a very strange shape we've got there. If I was to render it now, it kind of looks more interesting, but I don't know what this is all about. And it doesn't really matter. If I was to, what was I doing? Oh yeah, the constraints thing. So let's say I'm going to put down a plane. It's just going to be a flat ground type shape right here. I'll make it so that it's lower like that. So now, oh Jesus. Yeah, that light's too bright. That light is too bright. I'm going to turn it into a spotlight as well. I'm going to make it like about 1,000. Let me go into the rendered view. Okay, that looks like a nice light. So at the moment, that light is the default light pointing at the middle of the scene. So it's already got some rotation, which I'm going to take out. A spotlight by default points straight down. So what if I wanted the spotlight to follow this cube around? Now, obviously, I could turn it to the right place to have it looking. But what I can also do is I can add an object constraint to make it be locked into looking at Richard. This isn't working for some reason. I don't know why. Locked axis. What? Oh, there we go. It's working. So now I've got a spotlight here. Let me go to the camera and turn off the depth of field just so we can see this is a little bit better. Okay, we can see that that's there. It looks terrible. I'm going to be honest. But now if it was like, all right, so yeah, I like this scene, but this light's in the wrong place. You could move the light and it's not turning to look. All right. Oh, I'm moving the camera. I'm an idiot. I clicked on the wrong thing. We can now move the camera. It's not. Wait, the locked track. I don't think that's the one I want. I think I need the damped track. It's always one of the two, and I can never figure it out. There, is that it? So when I move it around, okay, so as the spotlight moves around, it's still always going to be pointing at Richard the Cube Net thing down here, which is pretty good. The background shadow looks a little weak. So I'm going to go into the shadow section and up the cube map size so it looks a bit more real. That looks better. And now it's like Richard the Cube Net thing is at sunset and he's got a bit of a shadow going off, which is kind of nice. Some parts of him seem to have been sunk through the ground, but it doesn't matter. I'm just demonstrating things at the minute. Is there a light that can mimic the sun daylight? There absolutely is. There's one, like we have this as a spot right now. If I change it to a sunlight, oh geez. Right, the sunlight is very powerful and sensitive. So there's 4 different types of light, and I'm going to go over those. I mean, I can go over those now, but I'll go over those in a little bit. A point light is basically a light where it radiates light all around in a sphere in every direction, in every single direction. The spotlight is, well, obviously, I've turned this thing down. You know what a spotlight is. It's like a cone of light that fades off like that. The area light is pretty good, although I'll leave that one for now because I need to put an area light in from scratch. Oh no, I changed the variable. Don't want nuclear apocalypse, not just yet. Is this going to still keep looking at that object? Oh, it is. So the sunlight it simulates daylight. So what happens here is it's not radiating light from here. There's this line, which is the sunlight's direction. Can I zoom in on the object? That might make life easier. So the sunlight simulates that light is traveling in this direction, so it casts the appropriate shadow over there. But the light comes from an infinity away. Like, you know, the sun is practically infinitely away, so it doesn't fade off over its travel direction like the other lights. So unlike a spotlight that has that cone and then it fades away, the sunlight is just, it has no fall off, basically, which is pretty cool. It's a really good one for scenes, that. And, you know, I've done 3 of them, so I may as well do the last one. I'm going to invent a new light here for this area light, because this one's pretty fun too. Let's zoom in on it. So we got this shape here. It's like a square. Would I be best off? Oh, wait, no. Okay. This grid here is cheesing me off, so I'm going to turn it off like that. In fact, can I turn off the axes a minute? That might make life easier. I'm going to rotate this in this direction. So the area light radiates light from within the area of this cube. So it's sort of like more of an area light thing. You can see here, if I zoom in, that as it's near to the ground thing that we've got, as it approaches it, the light gets... Oh, I'm accidentally hitting the wrong thing there. How do I just move it up? Let me use GZ. It gets closer, but it's radiating light from the whole object, which that can be useful for some effects. It is a bit expensive, that one, on processing power. So we'll leave that there. In fact, I'll put it in like that. I'll undo all of that. I'll put the sunlight back in. I'll change it to a spotlight and put it up like this. So we've got a light that's moving around. Because what we were demonstrating there is the constraints tab. Now this light here has a little light panel. Not everything has that because not everything is a light. Like the camera, if I click on the camera, it has a camera icon here, and it's stuff to do with the focal length of the camera. You've got depth of field, you've got lots of options in there, which is pretty nice. So we have gone a bit in depth into the properties panel, but there it is. And if you have a physical object, it has another type of thing there, and this is really important. Well, it has two. It has this green triangle, which is to do with node groups. Is it node groups or vertex groups? Vertex groups and lots of other stuff to do with some real nitty-gritty of the shapes, where you can set different faces to do different things, but we won't be going into that. But we will be using this one here, this little red ball, checkered ball thing here, because this is the materials property. So what I'm going to do now is just show you how quickly it is that you can make changes to the shape of Richard, because at the minute it's not looking very attractive. So if we make him red, suddenly he's got some sass, and if I make him glow a little bit, he's got even more sass. So, okay, that just looks horrible. Listen, I'm improvising here, right? But it's probably a good place to mention one other thing. I mentioned this briefly at the beginning, but Blender has a rendering engine. So it has two ones here. It's got Eevee and it's got Cycles. It's got Workbench, but we're not going to use that because I think that's for AMD cards, if I'm right, and I'm probably not. But we're going to be using Eevee a lot, but there is also Cycles. So Cycles is proper actual ray tracing. So now that I'm in rendered mode and looking around here, you'll be noticing, oh boy, we're having... Oh, wait. Let me change it over to the GPU. It was doing it wrong. We lost some frames there due to process. We lost about 300 frames there due to processing, which is unfortunate. But when I'm moving this around with my... It's not skipping any frames due to when it's using the GPU. That's pretty good. Let me just F12, get it to render. So... Oh, it's taking a while. Is it dropping any frames? It isn't. That's very good. That's very good indeed. So this cube now is actually fully illuminated. The red color is awful though. I'm going to be honest, the red color is awful. Let me just make a quick change. Let me turn off the light. Now we've just got the red. And I don't like the red color on this, so I'm going to change it to emit maybe a nicer sort of lime green color here. And with the emission on the Cycles render engine, it gives a ray trace view, so it's a much more professional looking image. The other rendering engine, which we're going to use a lot of because it's up here, because it's faster, is Eevee. And that's like a 3D game engine. It's got stuff in, like you might find options in computer games, ambient occlusion, bloom, screen space reflections, motion blur, all the rest of this nonsense. It's pretty good. And that's basically a roundup. We did get a bit in depth into the properties panel there, but it is very important and we are going to use it a lot. So it is worth it. So we've gone through that panel. We've gone through this panel. We've gone through this panel. We haven't gone through this panel. In order to go through this panel, have I changed it back to Eevee? Let me put it on Cycles. Actually leave it on Cycles. So what I'm going to do is very quickly, I am going to move this over here. And then I'm going to rotate it like that. And then I'm going to insert a keyframe for location and rotation. Then I'm going to go to frame number 250. And I'm going to move it, not that way, move it this way. And I'm going to make it spin round. Wait, let's make it spin round the right way. Where's my mouse cursor? Where's my mouse cursor at? It completely went. All right, okay, no. So hello, Blender. All right, there we go. It seems to have not liked my mouse cursor being there. Location and rotation. In fact, we're now demonstrating what this does. So I'm actually going to turn the light back on. And then we'll move back to the beginning. And just like that, we've created an animation just with a couple of keyframes. So when you want to make motion and something that moves, even if it's just your camera moving around a stationary scene, you need this panel. It's what we've done here is if you've ever used any kind of like movie editing software, you might be familiar with the idea of keyframes. So a keyframe is where you say, okay, literally what we said to it is, okay, at the beginning, the cube is going to be over here and it's going to be rotated around here because I pressed the I button and inserted a keyframe for location and rotation. Then over here, we moved it, rotated it and said, okay, at the end, it's going to be over here and it's going to have rotated somewhat around. So what keyframes mean is all the frames in between, it's sort of like, it's calculating where it's going to be in the middle of those. It's sort of like, it's calculating the motion of it on the fly. So it means that you don't have to go through each frame and individually tell it the rotation angle and everything. I mean, you can do that if you're crazy, but you don't have to do that. You can just put in a couple of keyframes and it will smooth it out in between. So now we have a smoothed, rotating Richard cube mesh net thing like that. Right, okay. So at this point, we've explained all the default panels. And I'm going to have a little drink, so bear with me. Can you make something like a video game map in Blender? Hold fast, perhaps. Downloading it now. You can. I don't think you would make like the full map inside. I mean, you could. You could make like a full to scale hold fast map inside of Blender. Holdfast does use the Unity game engine though, so you would have to import all of those assets into Unity at some point, which I've done, and it isn't too difficult to do, but I'm not an expert in. You know, I tried messing around with Unity, maybe try and make it a crappy type game. It didn't work out too well. I got bored after a couple of weeks, and then that was that. And then I deleted everything. And then a short time after that, I was like, man, I really wish I could start that again. But then it turned out I deleted it, and I was very annoyed with myself. Because I was like, damn. But that's a story for never. But yeah, it's certainly possible. And Blender is pretty free. It's easy to use. I've been using it for about 5,000 hours. That's why I have these little things that pop up saying what I'm doing. Can I make them any brighter? I probably can. Settings. Is there a change background transparency? That would be fully transparent, I guess. What if I make it like that? Background color. Can I change the background color to something like a bit eye-catching? Maybe a bit too eye-catching. Let's have a little look. That's mostly invisible now, and it's not going away. And oh right, because I only closed this down, didn't I? What about now? All right, that's very invisible. That's no good. Settings. Let me just adjust this thing. Transparency 255. Right. So, oh my God, that's hideous. Actually hideous. Unless I can change the font color. If I could change the font to be like very, very... Yeah, that'll do. I think. Is that going to be too... Oh, I've minimized it, so that's got to stay there. It's all right. It's all right. For the people that are going to need that, it's there. So hopefully that's pretty good. I've never made a holdfast map in Blender, but there is on the holdfast Discord, if you are really interested in that. There is a whole like section of the Discord where if you're a modder or you want to try your hand at modding, where they can give you lots of tips and advice. So I'd start off there if you want to get into that. I don't have a lot of advice for it. I just know it's there. Okay, right then. So at this point in time, after we've explained all the interface, I want to take a little moment to, because this is quite important. As you're new to Blender, you could potentially find yourself doing a couple of things that might make you feel like you're stuck or you're not sure what's going on and how to undo it. And one of them is if you are trying to click on something and nothing's happening. You can't really see it over here. But I'm trying to click on the plane. I'm trying to click on the light. I'm trying to click on the camera. Well, other way around. But I can't do it. Fear not. Fear not. The program's not crashed. You can still move around. If you can still move around, then you're probably fine. You've probably just gone into edit mode. It says edit mode up here. By the way, good luck if you're watching this on a phone because you'll not be able to read that. This is not mobile watching material, I must say. Edit mode is where you can edit a shape. For instance, I could just box select some of this and just delete the faces on it. It didn't work. Let me try that again. I could just box select there, delete those faces, and now made a pretty sizable hole in Richard. We've deleted some of the faces for him. And it's where you can edit the individual little parts and make things move around. Like, I could have that be like that. I could even mess this up really badly and scale these up or something. And now it's looking... Poor Richard the Cube. Did he ever imagine that his day was going to be like this? If you put it in rendered mode now, we've made some drastic changes to his shape. It's where you edit like a physical mesh, basically. And if you press tab, you go into that edit mode. We'll be doing that a lot in future episodes, but probably not at all in this one, other than demonstrating that. So just press tab again, and you should be able to select other things. But what if you click accidentally, and then you get a fully different scene, and you're like, what is this? What's happening? Where's everything gone? Right, okay. So across the top here, you've got your menus. You've got your menus here. You got these tabs, which are like preset up layouts of things for if you want to do a certain thing, like a shader editor, for instance, or edit in UVs. You've got like a little UV map thing over here. Don't worry about what I'm talking about. If you don't know, you don't need to know. An animation section where there's two different... All right, so that's like the camera view, and then you've got the scene view that you can move around. I see. That's rolling around. It looks pretty jank right now, which is cool. We're just demonstrating everything. So these could be thought of like little tabs, like in a Firefox browser, little places you can go. So if you find out that you've gone into a completely different mode and you're like, what? We're going to be doing most of everything that we do in the layout mode here. And in case you want to avoid confusion on these tabs, you can click on them, right-click, delete, right-click, delete, right-click, delete. I didn't need to do that. Right-click, delete. You can get rid of the other ones that we're going to be using. Now, if you accidentally somehow got rid of the layout tab, you can just click this plus right here. And then it'll have these workspaces, as they're called. And in the general, there's one called layout here. And this will bring you back up to the default view, like here. So that's important to know. I'm wondering what else there is to teach. All right. No, that's all of that section. Right then. So, the rest of this first section is going to be on getting you up to speed with some general how to manipulate things right now. So I've gone back to the default scene. If you've been messing around inside of Blender, File, New, General. It'll bring you up this scene here. So the most important thing, as you can see right here, I'm doing it, is moving around your actual viewpoint, this 3D view, so you can see everything. So let's go over that. Even though you may have already seen that we're pressing the M button. We're pressing the middle mouse button and holding it down. It's like clicking and dragging, and you can move around like this. Did I say dragon? Somebody better be ready to say dragon D's nuts. All right, then. Like that. Zooming in and out is just moving the mouse wheel. In and out, in and out, in and out. Fucking in and out. All right, okay, I'll calm down. It's getting a bit excited there. I think I already explained this, but to click on stuff, just left click. Just left click to select stuff. Or go up here and left click to select stuff. That's pretty easy. We're going to be doing that a lot. Now, if you wanted to, there's two other things. If you wanted to move the camera around like this, again, it's the middle mouse button, but you also hold down shift. Just think of it as you want to shift the view this way, that way, upwards, downwards, sideways, any way you whichwards. Any way you want it to be, like that. And another cool thing, which we're going to be using a lot, and hopefully I'll remember to explain it, at least the first few times, is if you want to refocus your attention on this object, on an object. See, say if we've gone in like this, but I want to look at the camera, I want to get close up to the camera to see its details. I mean, it's pointless because this camera is just nothing. But if I had a variety of shapes all around and I wanted to go and look in at something, you can focus in on it. And how you do that is you use numpad del, whatever it is. It's the button underneath the 3 on your numpad. Well, I don't know, because if you've got an American or different layout keyboard, it'll be that. But it's the numpad dot. Just remember it as that. Okay, and that is pretty useful. So that's how you move the camera around. Pretty important. So now we're going to talk about how you move other things around. So there's these buttons up here, which I neglected to explain earlier because I didn't want to overload you too much with information. But now that we're talking about moving stuff around, you know, earlier we did have this little orange button put up, and I was moving the cube around like that. You can absolutely do that. That's absolutely fine. You want something at a very specific location, you can type in that location. The cube is gone. Where's it at? It's far away, in a land far, far away. It's gone now. So I'm going to bring it back because I didn't want that to happen. And rotation is exactly what it sounds like. Scale, as we mentioned before, is stretching it. You can stretch it in individual directions. You can also use these 3 icons here. You've got movement, which, let me go into wireframe mode. It'll make life easier. You've got movement where you've got these little arrows coming out of the object, and you can click, left click, and drag them around like that. Pretty cool. And this is moving it just in one direction, just like that. And you'll see that's updating there, which is pretty cool. And you've got rotation up here, which is, instead of arrows, it's kind of like discs, because you're now spinning it around itself. So you could spin it in one direction or another to a specific point, which can be quite useful. And also the next one, you've got scaling, where you can click and drag on any of these widgets to scale it in that one direction. But wait, there's an even easier way. I mean, this way is pretty important. I usually have these on, to be honest. I usually do. Just so I can click and drag and move things around and do stuff like that. So I'm going to have that one on. So click that one on if you want the same thing. But you can also use keyboard shortcuts. So to scale, you would press S. And then if you press S, it will scale it in all directions at once. So that's pretty cool. All directions at once. So you don't have to do each scale individually, which is cool. You can also scale each one individually. For instance, if I wanted to scale it in this one direction here, you may have noticed these colored lines right here. This red one, this green one. These are 2 of the dimensions of space, right? In the 3D space, there are 3 dimensions. There is X, and there is Y. Now, why is this X? Because it says it's X up here. And why is this Y? It says it's Y up here. The green is Y, the red is X. And this little widget here, it's not really a compass, so to speak. I don't know what it's called, but as you move around, you might see that thing in the corner is changing. And it keeps in line with where the different dimensions are. So, if I wanted to scale it just on this green direction, I could press S, Y. And then it would just do that, like that. And as you move to the edges of your screen, you may have already noticed that the mouse cursor loops around the 3D view even, not the actual even Blender screen. If you're stuck doing something like this, but then you're like, oh no, I don't want to do it, I cancel that. You can either click, you have to left click to confirm that you want it to be that, and then press Control and Z, or I'm going to scale it on the Y again. Instead of left clicking, you can right click and it will cancel like that. So right click to cancel. That's pretty important. You're going to see that a lot. Right click to cancel. So that's how to scale, and that's how to scale in one direction or another, which is pretty cool. So to rotate, you've got rotate here. The keyboard shortcut for this is R to rotate, and rotating in all 3 directions is kind of weird because it sort of rotates it based off where it is on your screen rather than around the object. It's very difficult to explain, but the results aren't usually very good. A good example of using rotate, I'm going to add in a plane right here. This is like a flat square. And then instead of rotating just randomly like that, I want to rotate it on the Y to make it stand up like this. So another thing as well. Oh, no, wait, I'll finish this up first, and then we'll go over transforming on sort of like this grid here. Basically, hold down Control, and it moves it in steps, which can be useful for lining things up to the grid. But I'll mention that again in a minute. So, scaling is controlled via the S key. Rotating is controlled via the R key. So can you guess what moving? Oh, it had it written there. Can you guess what the moving shortcut key is? That's right. It said it up there. It's G. I don't know why it's G. Why is it G? Why can't it be M? Well, to be honest, M's a bit far away on the keyboard. So it's G. So GZ and hold down control, and I can lift up this plane in little steps like that. Or I could just do GZ and just move it normally like that. So there's all sorts of options there. So yeah, also, as I said, as the last thing, moving in steps, you just hold down control and move it in just the same way. So GZ, you move it somewhere and left click to confirm, or you would right click to cancel. Left click to confirm the whether it's moving, rotating, or scaling. Right click to cancel it. That's as simple as it is. Right, okay then. But we have some other things in the scene. I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm going to add in an icosphere. It's like a sphere made out of triangles. So we've already talked about the camera, this thing here. So in Blender, when it's time to make an image, you need a camera. You basically, think of the camera as like, the camera. You're taking a digital photo inside the 3D world, so you need a camera, which is right here. And this moves around exactly the same way with all these different things, so you can move it around to whichever way you wish to. And you can also numpad del to zoom in, all the usual shenanigans. But a camera is important. Without it, you can't render a result. And the camera has its own section down here. And it's got stuff like focal length in there. You've got stuff like depth of field, all kinds of options. It's probably worth pointing out this depth of field right here. If you were to switch over to the render engine cycles, then, which I need to explain in a moment, then some of the options would disappear. I'm going to do that. Like the depth of field is gone. Oh, no, it's not. It's still there. Well, I'm obviously wrong then, aren't I? Okay. It never used to be that way, but apparently it is now. Blender does get frequent updates, by the way, where they add new features, like a recent new feature that they added in, which is incredibly useful. Makes building stuff like a cityscape, if you wanted a city in the background with random buildings, different heights, different shapes, makes that very easy. And that's a very powerful thing that's in there. So we're going to be talking about that. But yeah, you need a camera in. And the camera, although, let's just see. Right, so that's what our current image is at the minute, because that's where the camera is. Let's get rid of that. I was on cycles. I can hear my computers just span up a lot. So it's very important which render engine you go with. Now, we already mentioned that cycles is like proper ray tracing. It does introduce... what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something real fast. I'm going to add in a mesh. I'm going to make it bigger. I'm going to move it down like that. I'm going to hit rendered mode. We've got a background. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go into the modifiers, edge split this, and then displace it. Is it edge split? Is that the one I'm thinking of? Or is it, what the hell one is it? I swear it's edge split. I did this last night, and now I can't remember what I did. So the displace is here. Nope, it's not doing it. The hell one was it? There was one of these. Edge split, it's not edge split. I can't find it now. It's not one of these. Is it in here? Displace, mesh deform, shrink wrap, surface deform. Lots of different options. Can't find the bloody one that I'm after. Have edge split again there. Probably not a good idea. Doesn't seem to be doing what I wanted it to do, and I'm very sad about that. Very sad about that. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. We've just made it bigger. I'm really annoyed that it hasn't worked. I'm very annoyed. Apply that. All right, it wasn't edge split. It's going to do my nutting now, because I wanted to show off a pretty cool thing real fast. Subdivision surface, triangulate. I swear there was another option. I swear down. I swear down there were another option. Can't do it. Oh, wait, it's this. I swear it's this. Oh, that's it. Okay, we've got it working. We've kind of exploded the sphere of triangles now, and it looks different. Almost looks kind of funky. Right. There was a point to all of this. I wasn't just larking about. Well, I was, but I'm also going to add in a light, which is a point light, which is going to be here. I'm going to go into here, turn off the background color. That's in the red icon right there. And I'm also going to turn off the other light. So we've only got light coming out from inside of here. And then I'm going to go in here and make this less. I just want it, you don't have to follow along with this. This is absolute bananas what I'm doing here. But I want to make the light pretty bright. So I'm going to increase it to be about 8,000 or something. So in the Cycles rendering engine, it will take longer to render. Hello there, Bruce. Hello there, Bruce. Hope you're having a good time. Enjoyed your stream yesterday. Welcome to the Blender session. So what you will notice is, oh yeah, when you press F12 to render, just like the camera movements, you can hold down Shift to move that image around, and mouse wheel zooms it in and out. This had, okay, right, Blender has something where it denoises the image. As you can see here, there's lots of noise in the image. The preview image that you have in this 3D view here is controlled via the viewport. This is technically called a viewport. The render has a different set of settings. So you can adjust the settings here so what's in the viewport is a lower quality image. Hold on. Let me just move to be around this. A lower quality image. So that it renders sort of like a lower quality version of it but faster, which can be useful. But then you have a much higher quality image and set of settings for your finished render. And the finished render also had denoising on, so I want to turn that off because I want to show you the image. So the proper ray tracer works by shooting a jet of light, or not a light, it's more of a light probe where it shoots it out of the camera for each pixel of this image and sees what it hits, if it maybe bounces, what kind of color the surface is inside of here, because obviously the light is inside of this weird shape that we've made. So the insides of it are less. Obviously, that makes sense. But sometimes the light strays a little off the path, and that's why it ends up a bit noisy. This is also, it makes an image which is, with the right settings, it won't look noisy, but you do have the option of denoising it afterwards. But in Eevee, it's changed again. It rendered, you see how fast that rendered? It was done. Up here is where it tells you how fast the render was done. It was done in 0.13 of a second, it says up here. That's the time to render. So if I change it back to Cycles, the same thing. Notice that there is a difference in the quality as well, though. Cycles, it says remaining time is 1 minute 15. Really? But it will speed up over time. Cycles. So in Cycles, you can control the ray tracing quality for rendering. Yeah, no, that's a pretty cool thing that's in there. And Cycles is recent. Cycles used to take absolutely ages to render. It really did. But they introduced a new cool feature, which I'm going to tell you about now. Even though we're probably going to go over render settings a bit more in the next live stream / lesson on YouTube, the next video on YouTube. But it does also have something called a noise threshold, right? Down here is very noisy, but it's only doing less sampling than the finished render. But you have a noise threshold. And the noise threshold, right, if we was to render this again, right, okay. So you see that down here where the light is cast, this area is much noisier. But up here, where there's nothing, there's no light or anything, it's basically black. So the noise threshold sets the threshold at which point it gives up on rendering. Because there's no noise up here, it will have already finished caring about redrawing this. Because it doesn't just do each pixel once, it does it multiple times. That's what the sample figure is. And yeah, the noise threshold means that it will give up on that because there's nothing there. There's no noise or anything under your noise threshold. But down here, obviously, where there's some light and shadows, it takes more time for it to finish on those areas. So it doesn't keep redrawing or recalculating the full image, which is very good for saving time. Like, I had renders, like when I was doing my last set of animations, that before they introduced this noise threshold thing in, each frame of the animation would take maybe about 6 to 7 minutes to render. It was on my old computer. And when they introduced this, with the right settings, it would take probably about 30 seconds to render each frame. So Cycles gives much better results. And it's much easier to achieve things like this crazy, if we look down here, this crazy light shadow effect that we've got here. It's much easier to achieve that in Cycles than it is in Eevee. Well, actually, it's not too bad. Like, if we look at the Eevee shadows, granted, there's a lot of noise because this has low quality settings. But if we go over to Eevee, we get this. And the reason it looks so different is because the light is coming from a light inside there, and all of these little triangles are casting these little shadows. But the light doesn't bounce around in Eevee. It'll just hit something, illuminate it, and that's it. In real life, if you had a light, like if you've ever had the sun coming in through your window on like a really hot summer day, and you know it's a beam of light that's hitting the floor, the light bounces off that floor and makes the room brighter. So that's what Cycles has going for it, but it does take longer to render, but it is also cool. Right then, so now I'm going to reset the scene. I'm going to file a new and go back to the default. So now, after having had that little sojourn right there, it's time to talk about adding and deleting objects. Now, I've obviously, it's probably not rocket science that you click on an object. Left click, you're on an object. Delete, that's the del button. That's the one above the arrow keys, unless you've got a shortened keyboard, in which case I don't know where the delete del key is. It's not the backspace button. Will delete all your objects. Now, to add an object in, you would shift and A to bring up the add menu, which is here. You have all kinds of options. I don't even know what many of these options are. I don't know what many of them are at all. Text, we're going to be using that very soon. And you've got meshes. You've got stuff like a plane. You've got a cube. You've got a UV sphere. You've got an icosphere. That's like a sphere that's made out of triangles. Triangles. Let me say that again. Triangles. You've got cylinder, cone, you've got other ones as well. And you can manipulate these objects using things that we're going to do later on. For instance, in edit mode, I could change this. You know what? Let's go into the face mode. And I'm gonna... I've selected all of the faces. Checker deselect. Right, okay. So I've done that, and now I'm going to try... Oh, that didn't work. What about now? Oh, that works. So you see right there is I've made a much more unusual shape just from that very basic one, just with a couple of options. This is in edit mode for editing shapes. Don't worry about following that along. We're not going to be doing anything that advanced in this because all this has been so far has been a lot of me talking. And if you've been having a little mess around with Blender in the background while you're there, while I've been rabbiting on and just maybe learning a few things or getting to grips with stuff, that's pretty good. So, we've already... Did we mention how to actually render? Did I tell you the F12? Oh, I deleted the camera. Okay. Okay, let me bring the camera back. Did I mention that F12 is how you render? Well, if I haven't, that's how you render. You just press F12. And you can render. And just another thing, if you want to go off and do your own thing, that's fine. But where does your render get stored? Right, so when you press F12, it renders the image. It doesn't save the image as a file on your disk. You have to go up here to Image, Save As, and it will save it somewhere. When you press F12, it's rendering an image. When you press Control and F12, it renders the image out. So you might be wondering, what's the difference? Well, basically, because it's Control and F12, it's going, whatever the result is, it will write it to this folder or directory here in Output. If you click where it's the printer, on the second icon down, Output Properties it's called, that's where you can set the folder that it's going to, and the file format. Many different formats, BMP, JPEG, PNG, AVI. If you're doing animations, you can have it render the animation. And one of the things that we'll be doing at some point is we'll be going over how to render an animation from Blender and we'll use something where it's going to loop round. So it's not going to be something where if you were to have it looping, like a background animation. In fact, I'll show you. Let me go back to the other screen. So this background animation here is looped. So at the end of the animation, normally inside of OBS, it would close down the movie file, but I set it to loop. But obviously, if it's looping, the background image, I want it to be seamless. Actually, I've got a funny feeling. Yeah, this one doesn't loop right. Let me just move it forward to near the end of the background animation. I don't think, because I made this animation in the background here like overnight, the day before starting streaming. Yeah, it doesn't loop round perfectly. But you see, if you have it looping around perfectly, it won't have that little glitchy jump that it has there. Now, maybe that doesn't matter to you. But it often matters to me when I'm doing stuff for my, like my pro stream. So I try and have stuff that loops around so seamlessly, you don't even know it's reset. Like, so it will just naturally, from one frame to the next, it's just a fluid animation. Because I think that's important. And maybe you don't need to. But that is basically the end of this first tutorial session. Like, I've thrown a lot of stuff at you, so I don't want to overblow you with too much information and too much stuff. What we're going to be doing after the break now is we're going to be doing a follow-along tutorial where we're actually going to be designing a text-based logo from scratch. I will hopefully remember to mention every single keystroke, every single thing. Feel free to pick me up on it if I don't. But there will be the yellow little box which will tell you what keys I'm pressing, hopefully. So it shouldn't be too confusing. So I'm back in here now. But we are actually going to bring up the break section. Where's the background? Where's the background noises? There we go. Actually, we had this music at the start. Can we move it onto a different song? Alright, this file's broken, apparently. It doesn't like playing more than the first little bit of it. Oh, it is an 800 megabyte file it's loading. Ah, okay then. Tell you what, we'll just let it play. Okay. Yeah, it does take a while to stop after I click the button for that. Never mind. If anyone has any questions about what we've gone over so far, feel free to ask them right now. I will be back in... Hold on, let me just have a look. I will be back in about... Probably in about 5 minutes. Maybe when the countdown's at about 4 or 3 minutes left. But feel free to get yourself a little drink, some food. I'm going to have a little drink right now and go to the loo. And I'll be back then. But if you do have any questions over what we've gone over so far, or any general questions about Blender, feel free to ask them and I will answer them when I return. Ta-ta for now. Okay, I'm back. Oh, Suspense, thank you very much for those bits. 255 bits. Nice round number, that. Highest number you can get with 8-bit binary. Oh, no. Or is it? Wait, it could be. It could be. I don't know. It's been a very, 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 very long time since I studied binary systems. Anyway, thank you all very much, so much for being here. If you've been watching the live stream or you've been watching on the YouTube video, feel free to leave a comment. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and all that jazz for more videos. Well, I'll be posting more videos anyway, regardless. Okay, so I do still have to let the countdown get on. I tell you what, where's the Sesh 1 result? Don't save that, there's nothing in it. Okay. Oh, why has it done it in a different screen? Why has thou done it in a different screen? So, should I let the countdown continue? I might take the countdown off, because I'm back now. Oh wait, let me have a drink first. And I'm about ready to go. So let's cut that out, and it's gone. Okay, so we're gonna now be going through a little project together, and you can follow along with that. With this, it's still rendering actually. We're going to try and get a little text-based logo like this going off. Now, as I think I said at the beginning as well, but I'll reiterate it here. Maybe you don't like the look of this. You don't like the colors. You don't like the layout. You maybe don't like the image at all. But it's about getting you some experience of manipulating stuff and setting up materials. So let's just break this down. We've got some shiny text right here. It's rendering in cycles. It's not losing any... It's losing a couple of frames, but not all that many. So it's fine to let it go on. We've got some like shiny text that has some shininess going off on it, because obviously shiny text is shiny. It's like a neon sign, basically. And then we're going to put some objects in, give them some colors there, and even make them shine too. So it almost looks like there's a kind of spotlight effects going off here. And this tiled effect in the background is just a array of flat squares. That's all it is. It's very simple. And these squares here are long, so we're going to be using some object manipulation. And we're also going to be setting up this thing at the bottom here. You might just be able to see that. Can I lift this up this way? There is a house in New Orleans. No, there isn't. Well, I mean, there is. There's plenty of houses over there. It's sort of like a little... It almost looks like a landscape, but it's kind of shiny. It's still rendering, and it's apparently going to take another 4 minutes to finish the render. Oh, yeah, because I set the settings really high, didn't I? Never mind. So this is the kind of thing that we're going for. It won't take too long to do. I'm not expecting this second section to be much longer than an hour, if even that. It's just to get you some grips and some experience with doing some cool stuff. And a bit of experience. So if you don't like it like this along the way, feel free to make changes. You could have your text in a different font. You could have your text being shining out in a different color. It's perfectly fine. You don't have to end up with the same result. You can do something a bit more fancy if you want to. I don't personally like this very much, but it's not about the finished product as in what the finished product is. It's about the process of getting there. So this is going to involve numerous things. So it should be pretty good. So with that said, let's get moving on it right then. So this is where you can start following along to do what we're going to be doing. Right, okay. So first things first is I'm gonna... Where should we start? I'm not really sure. Right, we'll start with the most important thing. Because this is like a text-based logo. I'm going to get rid of everything. Oh, wait, yeah. An easy way to get rid of... If you want to get rid of everything in your scene, or you want to select everything in your scene, you press A. I forgot to mention that earlier. You can press A. Double tap it again to unselect everything. A1's to select all. Double tap to unselect all. So that's A. You can also draw out a box like this, and then it will highlight the things. But that sometimes doesn't work. Like if you've got objects hidden behind it, like if I had a cube behind here, selecting like that wouldn't work. So bear that in mind. But we're going to get rid of everything. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to put in a text object. So we're going to shift an A. And then we're going to go down to, where's text? Text is right there. I was looking too far down for it. So it's put in a text object here. And if you wanted to edit what the text was saying, you can. You press tab. When you press tab and you're on a text object, it goes into like a typing mode where you can change what it says. So I'm going to change this to say Bitcoin Baron, like that. But it's, I pressed enter to drop down a line, by the way. I maybe didn't explain that, but I pressed enter to put it on a new line. But a little problem that we've got here is it's off center. We want it centered, really. And if we was to bring up the little object manipulation tool, it thinks the center of the object's over there. That's because this is an origin. Basically, the origin of your object doesn't have to be in the very middle of it. You can put it in different places. There can be good reasons for this, but we're not going to explain those today. So what we're going to do is we want it centered. So if you go over here, there's a little text object here. It's a little A, as it's written here. So you can click on that. And inside of here, you've got all sorts of text options. Now, there's actually one here in paragraph and alignment where you can set the alignment. So I'm going to set both of these to center. And what you'll see is it's now gone back to being in the middle like that. If you're too far out, don't forget you can zoom in with a mouse wheel, or you can press numpad del. And then you're focused on this one object. And it'll zoom you in a little bit. So it'll zoom you in like that. So maybe you don't want this particular font. That's pretty okay. So if you go into font in here, it's got regular. This first option, you've got bold, italic, and bold and italic. I'm not quite sure how you would set it to be bold text or italic text. There must be a way, but I don't know what it is. You can have a different font for every one of those. But regular, if you click where there's this folder icon here, open font, load a new font from file, and click on that. This will automatically... Blender will automatically figure out where your font folder is. I mean, it's probably going to be C Windows fonts, but if you're on like Linux or Mac, it might be somewhere different, and it'll know where to go. And in here, you've got all the different fonts that you can select and change it to. You can go as crazy or as wild as you want to with these. I've got emoji color. What the hell? Maybe I'll put an emoji in, just have like a little, almost like an actual like emoji in there. I could do that. I might do that at the end. For a text-based logo, it's kind of up to you what you want, but I would say that try and use something where it's very easily readable. Like this one here is very easily readable. This one over here, it's like an Iron Maiden kind of font. It's a bit more difficult to read. You don't want your text logo to be too hard to read. You know. Ideally, you could even have it in Mongolian if you have this font option. You just choose one of these that you're after or that you think is pretty cool. I might go with this OCR BT regular that I seem to have here. It looks pretty good. But just choose one, whichever one you want to, and press this. That kind of looks okay. It looks kind of geeky. Maybe for you... Like, this is a good font, actually, to use, because this has, like, there's a big space in between all of the different letters, and I don't want that here, but I can edit that. If you go over here to the side panel, down to where it's spacing, there's, in paragraph, there's a spacing section down here. You can close these down, so you might have to open it up by clicking on the little arrow that's next to it, like this geometry one. You can open it and close it off, so you don't have to have every section that it's got here open. And we're going to go down to paragraph spacing and the character spacing. Let's make that a bit less. That looks kind of better. That looks kind of better. I would advise against having it so the letters are overlapping, though, just because of what we're going to be doing on it. And then you've got that. But there's a bit of a space between the top line and the bottom line, so maybe I want to bring those a bit closer together, too. You can do. You can have them on the same goddamn line if you really want to. I don't know why you would, but it's your future. Go with it. Right then, so everything there is good. Now, at the minute, if you look around by holding down the middle mouse button to orbit around the object, you'll oh, excuse me. You'll notice that it's actually flat text. It's not like 3D. And sometimes that's good. Sometimes that's what you want. But for what we want to be doing today, we want it to have thickness as well. So to add thickness, if you go up to the geometry section, which we've got closed here, it has this option here called extrude. And if you up this value by clicking on the little arrow at the side of it, you can make it a 3D text like that. You can make it 3D, which is pretty cool. I don't want it to be very 3D, but I want it to be a little bit 3D. So I'm going to have it like as 0.02. Feel free to use whatever you want. You could have it be really tall lettering like that, but it does become harder at certain angles to see what's going off there. Although, to be honest, I mean, we're not going to do this, but I'm just going to do this right now, so you don't have to follow along with this bit. I'm going to add in a point light, and then... Is this going to work well? Probably not, but I'll do it anyway. And I'm just going to add a light that's somewhere in there. Now, I want to see how this looks like in the rendered mode now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Z, because at the minute we're just in the solid. It's sort of like a preview 3D mode without any textures or anything. I'm going to change it to rendered. We have a background which is grey. I'm not a fan of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to where it's red. This little red, I think it's world properties. In the surface section, this top section where there's a color, I'm going to, like I did before, I'm going to reduce this color to be nothing. And now we've got an almost cool effect of where we can see sort of some parts of the object, but we can't see the top parts. So we can't actually see what the text says. We can only see some of it. But you could maybe, ooh, it's very close to the edge there. You could maybe have the light animated and moving around like that. That could be kind of an idea for an introductory logo. I'm just moving the light up and down right now. I'm holding onto the blue thing and moving it up and down right now. But not really all that into that. So, oh no, I want to get rid of that light. Oh, the light's gone already. Okay, I've gone back too far a little bit. Actually, no, this will do, but I do want to turn off that background, so I'm going to make that like that. And we want the text to glow because we're in rendered mode now. Press Z to change it to rendered mode if you want to. Well, you do need to because otherwise you won't be able to see what we're about to do. So we got the text here. What we're going to do now is we're going to make it have a different visual appearance. We're going to give it a material on it. So down here, there is this tab here called Material Properties. It's like a ball with different sections on it. And in here, it's like empty. So what you want to do is press New to make a new material. I'm actually going to give this a name. I didn't give anything a name before, so I'm going to give it a name now. I'm going to call this MTL_text. This name can be anything you want it to be. You don't have to call it that. You could call it text material or whatever you want. But down here now, you've got all these different options. Now, this text is going to be glowing. So when something's glowing inside of Blender, it's called emission. It's emitting light, so it's called emission. So emission here, you can't see what it says. Oh, it's just called emission. Right, okay. I thought it was cut off for some reason. Can I make this a little bit bigger? Like that. That'll maybe work. So emission, what it's got here. You have like, it's a color wheel, but you have to raise up the brightness, this slider at the side, to see what color it is. And now you can see that our material is changing color. But we don't want it to be white. I'm going to make it kind of, do I want blue? Okay, I'm already making it so that we're not going to have the same thing at the end. Actually, I'll try and keep it similar, just for the sake of it. And now we've got this material that's right here, and it's visible. It's visible. We do have it selected as well, but now that we've unselected it by clicking on the background, we can see that it does have, it's not like emitting light. And even if it was emitting light, this is what it would look like because there's nothing else in the scene for that light to hit. But it's okay for now. So what I want to do is I want to have this on a wall stood up, and it's currently, the text is sort of lying down on the grid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press, we want to rotate it around this red line here, which is the X on this little widget that always updates to let us know what directions are what. So I'm going to press RX Now, here's the thing. I'm not going to move my... Well, I mean, I can move the mouse. But what I'm actually going to do is type the angle in that I want it to change by. And I want it to change by 90 degrees. So I'm going to type in 90, because that will take something in a right angle from where it is at the minute. So now I've got a text object that's stood up like this. Pretty cool. And I want to move it up because this grid is annoying. In fact, this grid, if you want to turn off this grey grid, because it can be a little bit annoying. It can be useful, but it can be annoying. Just go up here where there's like, it looks like like a sphere with a little circle and they're joined together. Overlays. If you hover over the little arrow, it's called overlays. Click on that and there is viewport overlays and you can turn off the floor and then it's gone. The scene's simpler. It's a bit easier to mess with, to understand. And now I'm going to hold down Control and move this up a little bit. I'm going to move this, hold on the object thing. I've moved it up 3 meters. So the Z is now 3, 0, 0, 3 in the location. That's where it's at. And now I'm going, I didn't mention this before. Now I want to have a camera that's looking at it and it's looking flat at it along this green axis here. So I'm going to press numpad 1 and that's brought the grid back. But what also it's done is if you press numpad 3, you've got numpad 1 and numpad 3. You've also got numpad 7, which is looking... Numpad 7 is looking top down. And numpad 3 is looking right along the side, perfectly along the side. And numpad 1 is like looking perfectly from the front. Just think of it like that. That's an easy way of getting to grips with it. Right. So another thing, I didn't teach you about this before when we were talking about the camera. I'm going to teach you about it now. We're going to press Shift A and add in a camera to our scene. So that's right here. Now, the reason I said to press numpad 1 is we're now looking at this dead on, perfectly 100% down the middle. And wherever, when you make a camera, wherever your 3D view is when you make the camera, if I add another camera now, it's at a different angle. Actually, I'm going to press Z and go back to solid mode so you can see both cameras. So this other camera is looking along the route that this view was right then. So if I look now and add another camera, it's looking in a different direction. But we want to get rid of that one and that one, because this one that we just added in after pressing numpad 1 and going add camera is the one that we want. But we want the camera to, it's facing the right direction, but we want it to be centered on the text. So I'm actually going to move this up. So I'm going to click on this blue thing to drag it up. Click and drag and move it up to be in about the middle, somewhere like that. There is also another problem. The camera's center, where it's looking from, it's looking out that way. It's looking over here, which would be fine if it wasn't positioned right there. So obviously the next thing we're going to do is we're going to move the camera back. So don't forget, moving around your 3D view, your shift and mouse button to move around and reposition if you want to. And I'm just going to click and drag and move it back. Now, if you want to check, we did mention this before, if you want to check what the camera is looking at and seeing right now, you press numpad 0. And then you see, this is the borders of the image if you were going to render. This is the borders of it, which is pretty cool. So, we have this and we have this text that's right in the middle. In actual fact, my camera feels like it's a bit far away now, so I'm going to move it in a little bit, like that. These are the values for the camera, but you don't have to follow along exactly here. Just get it so it sort of looks about the same. I pressed escape. Don't worry about that. That's useless. Sometimes I'll just press a button that doesn't do anything. Don't worry about it. I'll try and call myself out if I do. Going to move it back slightly so the text is a little bigger like that. So we've got Bitcoin Baron. You don't have to put Bitcoin Baron. You can put whatever you want as your text-based logo. You could put Suspend 16. You could put Bruce Luke 420. You could put whatever you want in there. So I want this text, personally speaking, I want this text to not be perfectly in a horizontal line, but I want it off to one side. So I want to rotate it sort of around a little bit on this green axis, I believe. So if I press, and green is Y, remember? So if I press RY, I can turn it around and just have it slightly like that. How does that look? I can do this from the camera mode, actually. So you can press numpad 0 and then RY to move. I just want it a little sort of off like that. I mean, if you want it to be like not rotate it at all, you can just press Control and Z if you're not into it. But I'm going to RY and change it to be a little bit on the side like that. So this is all good, but oh no, the finished image, I don't have it there anymore. Okay, but we want to have this text as being just lines, you know, a bit like a neon sign. You know, we're going for that kind of neon sign kind of vibe with this. So there's a process for doing that, which when you know what you're doing takes literally 3 seconds. But because I'm like, well, no, it probably takes about 5 to 10 seconds. But I'm going to go through it more slowly to explain to you what's happening here. So if we press Z and go into wireframe mode here, you'll notice wireframe mode is showing you the edges of all the faces on the object. You'll notice there's all this kind of nonsense here. There's all these little really stretched triangles around the font. And that's because it's making the font into a 3D shape from, you know, whatever font we've selected and whatever we've typed in there. But this is not ideal because if we were to, I'll show you. I'm going to go into, I'm going to go back into rendered mode now after showing that off. So that's Z and rendered mode at the top there. Oh no, I went to the side so it thinks I wanted solid mode. So at the minute we've got this. We want to apply a wireframe modifier, but don't follow along with this bit because I'm going to undo this bit. I'm just demonstrating now. So we don't have the wireframe modifier. Okay. There's a reason for that. The text object is a bit like a camera or a light in your scene. Although it looks physical, it's kind of like a process that's running to make this physical shape here. This isn't actually a physical shape. We have to sort of finalize it with an extra step to convert it from a special text object to being what's called a mesh. A mesh is like, a cube is a mesh. It's made up of 6 sides, 6 faces. It's a real 3D physical shape. The text object is a little bit of a special thing. And in the modifiers panel down here, the little spanner or wrench, we don't have the wireframe thing here because as this isn't physical, it's limited in the different things it can do. It can do edge split for some reason, even though it's not real. Okay, so it's a very easy process to convert this. So what we want to do is we want to click and select the text. Go up to this menu up here that says Object. And there's all these different options. Don't worry too much about them. We want to go down to where it says Convert, which is down here, and convert it to a mesh. So after you've got your text done and you've finished that, we've converted it to a mesh. And now I can demonstrate for you. You don't have to follow along here. I'm going to be in the spanner in here. And if we go wireframe, that's disgusting. That's literally disgusting. All right, then. So I'm going to, right, this was wrong. So I'm going to get rid of that. The reason is I think the wireframe mode's going wrong because if we go to wireframe mode, of all these little faces that it's putting far too many faces. Like there's different faces here for the very edges of the curve when we're zoomed right in. So it's got far too many faces. So there's a modifier we can use, and I hope it works. I really hope it works. Otherwise, I might have to undo a little bit and add a different font in. It's called Decimate. And it's where it simplifies the object. There's all these different options in here. It basically gets rid of some of the faces that's in it. Oh, boy. And sort of, instead of adding faces to it or doing anything like that, it tries to merge faces. That's probably going to look a little goofy right now. Yeah, it's had a little bit of a problem up there. We don't want to use the collapse. What you want to do is click on planar over here. And then... And you should be doing this bit, by the way. Did I mention that? So with your text, after you've object converted it to a mesh, which is in here, convert mesh, click that if you haven't already. And then click the wrench, add modifier, and select, no, it's decimate from there. I've already got it selected, so I'm not going to do it. And then there's this little arrow over here. Now, at the minute, the changes that we've applied with modifiers, you can keep them as stuff that's sort of live, as in you can turn them off or, oh, you can't see. If I go into wireframe mode, you can. You can turn them off or on. I'm going to explain these two buttons, this monitor and this photo camera, which are up here as well. Well, the photo camera is. This one's got a eye next to it. I'll explain them now. we've reached the point, why not? So what this monitor thing does is it turns on or off, showing the effect on your object in real time. Or this other one here is for the render, so you can have it so it doesn't actually do the effect in the render. I don't see what the point of that is. I don't know why you would not want an effect that you've selected to be on in the render, but it is there. But it's better to use this to turn it off rather than deleting this if you're just turning it off to test something, but you want it to come back on. And up here, we've got the self-same camera icon here. Now, up here in the object outliner panel up here, these are slightly different. So the eye is the same as the monitor. It will turn it off. It will turn the object on or off, showing in the viewport here. And this camera object will turn it showing on or off in the render. For instance, if I press F12 to render now, we get nothing, because I said basically by clicking on this, you can click on it to toggle it on or off. It's hard for you to see that because it's very small, but it is what it is. I can't really do anything about it being small. But that camera thing, if I have it so that it's white and it's on, we can now see the text. When I turn it off, it doesn't draw it in the render. And this other one is just for turning it off or on in the viewport. And you can use that if you've got like many objects in the scene and you want to turn stuff off so something that you're working on is more visible. You can do it that way. So, what was I doing? I forgot what I'm doing. But what I'm actually going to do is, rather than having this effect as being something that's live and I can turn it on or off if I want, because I know it's what I want, I'm going to click this little arrow next to it and click apply. And that gets rid of this, and it's applied that effect and made it final on the object. So the object has now had that effect applied to it. And that's got rid of a lot of these lines that were there. There's still some left. The reason why there's some left, I don't want to get bogged down too much in like shape theory here, is some of the text objects have like holes in them. Like this bee's got 2 holes in them. You have to have like a little split in the front face if it's got a hole in it. Otherwise, like the edges of the face, it will just fill in the hole. It's a weird thing. It's hard to explain, but you've got to have some lines in there. So don't worry about that. You'll probably still have some. And now I can apply the wireframe, hopefully. It's still got something that's all over the place there. It's still got that one bit that's not right. Will ticking any of these options do anything? Relative. It is still wireframe. If you zoom right in on the object and have a look at it, it is still wireframe. I thought it got rid of the effect altogether, but it is still a wireframe. And wireframe is where it takes, if I turn this off, where it takes every single edge of every face and makes it sort of like 3D. So it makes a shape around it. So if I was to zoom in, I'm zoomed in quite a long way, and go into solid mode, we can see that there. But if I, oh, right. So if I turn that off, it's just filled in still. So that's a bit difficult to see. But hopefully you can see that it's made a 3D kind of shape from each line. And you can adjust the thickness as well. You can make it bigger. All right, that, whatever it is there, oh, I think it's a line going that way. It's starting to move outwards, so a bit limited with this font. Some fonts might have jagginess like that. And maybe ticking the relative box doesn't really do anything. What about if I keep it relative but untick even? Will this make it stop doing that? Oh, that does seem to have, yeah, that does seem to have stopped it. Feel free, if it's not working out for you and you've still got some weird jagginess or something that's popping out like that, which can depend on what font you've chosen to use, to Control Z many a time till you get back to having like a text object. The object in here, I didn't explain that, but if I add in a new text object now, remember we mentioned that text objects are special shapes until your original text object as this like A icon here. Because this one here has like a triangle icon, similar to let you know it's a mesh. But the A one is letting you know that it's a font object. So feel free to go in there and adjust your font settings or something if you want to do that. But I don't want to do that, so I'm going to get rid of that right now. Okay, so we have this text object there. And if we press F12 now that we've done the wireframe modifier on it, we have, oh, that looks kind of pretty cool. We have like a wireframe outline right here. And that could almost be pretty cool. Ghoul? Are we playing Fallout? That could be pretty cool if that's the kind of thing that you're into. Now, if you want to really... Okay, we're going to go off on a little tangent here. You don't have to follow along. But if you do want to try something out, you can add a plane in like this. And we're going to R... And it's the red one, so it's that X, RX90, like this. So we've got a background plane like this. And I'm going to move it up so it's behind the text. I'm going to scale it up somewhat so it's bigger than the text. Now just have a look around, make sure that it's very close to the text like that. And you can try do this if you want to. Remember S to scale things up. Did I mention that? I did before, but I'll mention it again now. And just pull it up to move. If these widgets aren't on, you need to click on one of these things. Should have mentioned that at the beginning. Oh well, it is what it is. So now, if I press F12, this, remember, we set this up so that this text was emitting light or theoretically emitting light. All right, but it's not going to do anything here. But it will, because emission in the render engine of Eevee, which is the sort of simpler one that you can do some cool effects on, but it's not like the proper ray traced engine. Emission works differently in Eevee. You basically, like, if you have a shape and you tell it to emit light, it won't really emit light inside of Eevee, but if you switch it over to cycles, it will. Now, if you do this, before you do anything else, if you select render engine cycles, look down here in device. Hopefully you've got a GPU compute. If you don't have GPU compute, go up to File right quick. No, Edit, Preferences. You may have to turn on GPU rendering. Edit, Preferences. And if you go down to the System section here, now I have NVIDIA, so it's CUDA that I find my graphics card under. If you with AMD, you might have... you might need to go in the HIP section and tick that box. And if you have a processor like an AMD Ryzen or an Intel Core whatever, you might want to untick that box. So you're telling it just to use the GPU like that. And why would we change it from the CPU to the GPU? Well, I'll show you. I've changed it to cycles. I've hit CPU. I'm actually, you see where it says output properties? Maybe you want to, if you want to do this comparison, you may want to go down to where it says % here in the output properties to make it do a smaller image so it doesn't take as long. So I've made that 25% and now I'm going to press F12 to render it. So up here at the top, you've got information about the, oh, it's already finished. So it finished rendering this with the CPU. It is using the CPU. I hope it is. Yeah, because I just got a bunch of drop frames, so it definitely is. If you use the CPU, damn it, I'm going to have to do it again now. All right, so at the end of, after it's finished your F12 render, the time here is how long it took to render. So it took 3.85 seconds to render that image using my CPU. I'm going to close that, and now I'm going to change the device to GPU. Oh yeah, after you've in your preferences in system, you've changed it so it's got your graphics card selected. You've got like these 3 lines here. Up here, click Save Preferences. It might have auto-save preferences ticked. Save that. So then you'll always, by default, have your cycles render device with the GPU rendering set up. Otherwise, it might default next time you load up the program to being CPU only, which isn't very good. So if I, now with the GPU, press F12 and render it, it rendered it in 2.01 seconds. Now, this is a pretty simple scene. And I made it really smaller. So just to make the comparison even better, I'm going to change the % size to 50. So it's rendering at half of the resolution we've got set there. And it finished this in 4.26 seconds using my GPU. If I change it to the CPU and do the same thing, oh boy. I'm getting a lot of drop frames right now. An awful lot of drop frames. Apparently we're at 6 frames a second on the thing because it's using up all of my CPU power. That took 15 seconds, so there's a big difference there, and I promise I'm never going to use CPU rendering again. There was a big difference there. That's just how it was. I hope it didn't crash my stream momentarily. Right then. But we made in this, we added this big background here. But the point is, and hopefully you've seen it, now we're going to have to do it again, is that now, perhaps, if you want just a little shiny text on black type logo, you got yourself a logo there. It has only rendered it at half resolution. If that's something you want to take and use, feel free. Once again, to save it in this output directory here, which is currently TMP, so it will be in CTMP. You can click on this folder icon here if you want to select something, by the way. You can click on there to select a specific folder for it to save the rendered file into. And I'm just going to have a drink to give you a chance to do that if you need to. Once again, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Hope you're having a good time. Man, I had a double drink there. I must be feeling spicy. Okay. Or you can also save the image by, after it's rendered and you've pressed F12, going up to Image and Save As. You can do that to save it to your hard disk, wherever you wish to anyway. So feel free to do that. I'm now going to get rid of that plane. And I'm also going to set the rendering engine in this top button here back to, not cycles, Eevee, like this. And then go and press Z and change it to the rendered mode. So now we can see us text. So now let's go on with putting everything else in. So I'm going to Shift A and add a, you know what? First things first, let's add a plane like this. We're going to get the square background sorted out now. That's going to be his next thing to do. So this plane, which is right here, is laying down, and we don't like laying down. That's a sign of laziness. So I'm going to hit RX90 to make it stand upright. We've turned it 90 degrees on the X red axis, like this. These squares are a little bit big, so actually I want to make it smaller. I want to scale it down so it's smaller to about 10% of its current size. Can you figure out how to do that using the knowledge you've got so far? You could press S and then just 0.1. And then it's made it 10% smaller. All right, that's too much. S.2. So that's 0.2 scaling we've just given it. So now I want to go and look from my camera's perspective because I want to show you something else. Okay, so now we're looking through the camera's perspective. So the edge of this is the edge of your rendered window again. So actually, now I think about it, I'm going to Control Z that and do S.1, like I said originally, and we'll zoom in a little bit because I had my sense of perspective wrong. I want to move this so it's over here, about here maybe. Actually, no, make it so it's up there. So even in the camera mode, you can shift and middle mouse to drag around like this, which is what we're going to do. I'm going to move this so it's just outside and on the left here. So what we want for his background... Why is my PC's fans ramping up? Why is my PC's fans ramping up? Am I still losing frames? Hold on a second. Let me just Task Manager. CPU percentage is 16? Are you serious? Google Chrome is apparently using up 3% of the processor. That's disgusting. All right, we'll just move on from that. Right then, so I'm going to go in a wireframe mode now, just so everything's got a bit more of that, you know, preview look about it. And I'm going to introduce you to another modifier. You know, when we made this a wireframe object and we got rid of all those extra faces using this modifier, you're going to be very good at this. And we want a wall of these little squares across with little gaps in them. And we want this wall to be up as well as across. So there's an easy way to do that in Blender. If you click on the wrench, whilst you've got the plane selected, click on the wrench over here, the modifiers panel, add a modifier, and it's called an array. Now you may have... What's this? Officialkins, thank you very much for the 20 months. Hello, hope you're doing well. Just going to lay this here. It's been a blast. Sits quietly down. Yeah, how very dare you just burst in here in the middle and distract everyone. How very dare you? I hope you've had a good day. Right then. So you may have noticed when we added the array modifier that if I press numpad del right now, we'll zoom in. We've got another square next to his original. And if you play with this factor x, you'll see that as we change that, it's moving this other square. It's not moving the original, it's just moving one. What the array modifier does is it makes a copy of the original object, and you can move it around. We've got factor x, y, and z. So you could have this, instead of being at the side, you could have this being above it. Change that to a 1 and have it move like that. But wait, that's not all. As I change it back to 1.1. Actually, I'll change it to 1.2. That's not all. If we zoom out, you'll see that there's a count up here. If you increase this, you get a line of squares all the way along. All right, so how many do we need? Let's press numpad 0 and go back. Yeah, we've almost got one line of squares right here. Let's get it all the way to the end. Doesn't matter if it goes outside. Anything outside of this little frame here isn't drawn. This is like the edges of your camera. That's basically what it is. So we've got that there. So now we've used that to make 36 copies. But wait, that's not all. I'm going to click this button here to sort of minimize that. Arrow, click it to open, click it to minimize. And I'm going to add in another one. But this time, instead of factor x being high, we're going to use factor y. And now we've made a copy of the whole row. And now, oh wait, is that 1.2? It is. Make sure that's 1.2. And the first array is 1.2 as well. 1.2x first, then 1.2 there. And again, we can just make more and more copies like that all the way up to the top of the window. I'm going to add another one in. It's better to go too far out of the view than not far enough out of it. Don't embarrass me, okay? I'm learning. You better be. I'm going to give you a test. Everyone else has been good and turned up at the right time, but I'm going to, I don't know. I'll give you some homework. I'll give you some homework to model to model a pizza in Blender. That's going to be your homework. Right, okay. And I'm expecting detail. I'm expecting shaders. I'm expecting glistening materials on the food materials. I want it to make my mouth ejaculate. That's what you've got to do. Which won't be hard, because anything that looks like a pizza. Oh, why did I say pizza? Now I'm thinking about pizza. Oh. It's not easy being addicted to food. Do it, you won't. Do what? I'll make pizza, you'll see. You've got to make it in Blender. It's got to look like a pizza. Okay, to be honest, that wouldn't take too long. Anyway, meanwhile, back at the plot. We have this now. So if I press F5 to render, F12 to render, we see nothing. I don't know if we were expecting to see anything, but we didn't see anything. And the reason for this is going through the shiny text object, but we're still in Eevee. If I was to switch it to cycles and turn it on, the emission from this object won't just make it look brighter, but it will actually shine out. So if I press F12 now we can see that we've got like a little bit of a thing going off there, which is all right. Kind of like the look of that. And again, feel free if you want to just take that image there and just save that image, you feel free to, but I'm not interested in doing that right now. So we've got his background there, and that's pretty cool. We can even, I'm going to switch it back to Eevee now, and I'm going to go into Eevee and Z to go into rendered mode right here. Now, we do have a problem here in that it's not a very light scene, but we have the plane object selected. So it gets this, you may have noticed it's got this like yellowness around it, which makes it hard to see. I think there's an option to turn this off somewhere. Outline selected down here, up in the same overlays thing as where you turn the floor on or off. You've got another option for outline selected. I only recently found out about that, just going to say, which is like that. So this plane here, we haven't given it a material. We're going to give it a material and an appearance now. So I'm going to call this MTL_, background. background, I'm going to call it. Doesn't matter what you call it. Call it your uncle's aunt's fanny or whatever you want. And there's an option in here, in all of these material settings that you can play with to your art's content. There's one called metallic. And if I zoom in on the text and then I turn this up, nothing happens. All right. So in this top section here, the render properties, go over to screen space reflections. And now we see something. I don't know what we see, but we see it. It's there. There was a little change. We've still got the plane selected. Back to the materials tab down here. And metallic is on roughness. Turn that down. In fact, I am gonna, the plane's there. I'm gonna Z to wireframe mode so you can see what I'm doing. It's a bit hard to see it now. I'm gonna move the squares back a little bit like that. And then I'm gonna go back into rendered view with Z. And now you can kind of see the reflection a little bit. Once again, Eevee doesn't do reflections very well. It does them, though. It does do them. But this is where I can demonstrate what that roughness does. So we have what looks like a pretty good reflection. Actually, up in this top thing, render properties, screen space refractions, turn off half res trace. So it's a bit more real. Trace precision, put that up to be like that. Refraction ain't going to do anything on it. So trace precision, change that to 1, and untick half res trace, because that is half in the resolution of the reflections, which isn't really very good. Now it looks a little better. Because there's all these little gaps in between the squares, it's like having a bunch of mirrors. I won't let you down. You haven't so far. I don't expect you will yet. But now, with the plane selected, I can show you what the roughness does, because the roughness is important. This metallic thing is how reflective it is. There's even some reflection. It's a specular reflection here. There's a little bit of a reflection that's on it. I'm going to turn that off just because, but I'm going to turn the metallic up. Metallic is pretty much how much like a mirror it is. So maybe it should be called mirror, but what do I know? And the roughness, this is very important. This is how blurry the reflection is. We can increase this. Click and drag inside of the box to change this, by the way. I don't know if I did that. And you'll see that that background is becoming more blurry. And it will even get so much blurry that it's just faded away. It's almost like a murky mirror effect. So you can use that to set up how blurry it is. And I'm going to use that to make it a little bit blurry. And if I press F12 now we've got some more funky text. I'm going to go up here to the output properties because we made it half resolution. I'm going to make it full resolution again so we get a bit more detail. That looks pretty interesting. It's a pretty cool effect. Yeah, it's not too bad. Anyway, I'm just messing around now. 90% of what I do in Blender is messing around, by the way. I'm going to leave, you know what, I'm going to leave, hold on, let's just make a quick check and go to render engine cycles and see how it looks inside of cycles. The better ray tracing rendering engine will take longer to do. It says 10 seconds, 5 seconds remaining. Yeah, remaining up there is, oh no, what's happening there? Oh, it was doing something. And now my fans have span up again. I'm always curious when they do that. They don't normally do that unless the processors start to work really hard. So yeah, that looks kind of all right. Again, if you like the look of it, feel free to image save as after pressing your F12. All right then. So we've now got that. I'm going to keep flipping between the Eevee and the cycles. Personally, I use cycles for most of my stuff, but sometimes, unless it's with like, this text is supposed to be, the wires of this text are supposed to be emitting light in all directions. You know, emitting light, which Eevee doesn't do very well. Unless you're doing something like that, or you need some perfect reflections. Pretty much everything, when you get experienced, you can make some cool effects inside of Eevee. For instance, if we go back momentarily to this thing right here, this background animation here, this was made in Eevee. It wasn't made using cycles. So you can get some good results without having to have the ray tracing on. But sometimes you need it on for whatever reason. So bear that in mind. All right, okay, I'll turn that off. Right then, so the next thing on our list is we want to make a cube. So I am going to add Shift A to, it didn't do any, oh, I didn't have Blender clicked on, did I? Add in a mesh, which is a cube. First thing I'm going to do on this, we've added in a cube right there, is I'm going to click over here. I'm going to call it Spotlight. I'm going to, all right, yeah, if you want to change the name of something, double click on it up here in the outliner, change it to Spotlight. So I'm going to make it a spotlight. It's going to be one of those green cubes from the thing before. And I'm going to click new right now to make a new material for this object. And then I am going to go to emission here. And I'm going to make it so it has, so it's a real cube that's sort of emitting light, or it's got its own light inside of it. Oh yeah, emission strength. If you want, you can change that. It won't have much of an effect inside of Eevee because it's not very good with emission. But let me just, for a laugh, switch it over to cycles. You can see that there's a bit of a difference in how things look in the proper ray traced rendering. Spotlight, I'm going to go down to here to the emission thing. Emission strength is currently 1. Let's make it 50. All right, so now that's a much brighter light right there. It's so bright, actually, that if I was to render here, you don't really see much of the light rendering out from the thing. However, something like this can be a pretty cool effect underneath your scene to have some light coming in, but you're probably better off just using a light source and pointing it in this direction. Or a sunlight might work. Or a spotlight. You figure it out if that's the kind of thing you want to go for. Looks kind of cool. Looks kind of cool, but it's not for us. It's not for this. So I'm going to get rid of... Wait, I didn't want to get rid of cube altogether. All right, okay. I'm an idiot. Right, so mesh, cube. I've added in a new cube again. And I'm going to add a material. And now I'm going to name this Spotlight because I destroyed the old one. Spotlight. Then I'm going to go down to emission. Bring up the brightness slider. Click and drag and make it green. Do I really want it to be green? Green is kind of a meh color. What about purple? What about... I kind of like this kind of violet-y color. I might go with that. Gives some nice reflections on there as well. Gives some nice, like, a really nice effect on there. Okay, drop frames is at 0.2%. That's mostly because of what we were doing earlier, not this scene right now. I do have a little struggle going on here because this likes to use the graphics card and the processor a little bit, as does OBS. So if there's ever any kind of like serious problem of frame rate droppage for a long time, I should be able to predict when that's going to happen, and I'll tell you just to hold on to your hats if it's drawing something. Yeah, it looks quite a nice little reflection type thing it's got going off there. So we've got that. So I'm now going to teach you about something to do with edit mode. We talked about edit mode before, and I'm also going to turn on the outline selected so it's a bit more like normal. In layers, you can turn off this orange outline. We didn't want it for these small squares because it was hard to see what the effect was behind it. So I turned it off with outline selected from this menu up here, but I now want it on, and I'm going to click on this. So what I want is, I want this to be a bit like a cube spotlight with like a bright light, a bit like that lit up cube was, but I want it to be only shining from the top. So what I'm actually wanting to do right here is have a different material for the top part, and this is actually pretty easy to do. So what we're going to do is, shall I change this to MTL spot? Keep everything with a sort of naming convention there. I'm going to add a new material here. I'm going to click this plus, and this makes a new material slot. That's right, I said slot. It hasn't added a new material in. You have to press this new button to do that. And now I'm going to double click on this and call this Spotlight Brightness. In fact, I'm going to call it MTL Spotlight Shine. You know what? I might just, for the rest of the time when we're looking in rendered mode, because this is going to be a fairly simple scene, I might just keep it in cycles and GPU compute. Just because this gives the better result. Right, back down to the materials section. So MTL Spotlight Shine. And we want it to be We want it to be white and bright. So there we are. We've got it nice. Let's have it 50 like it was before. But wait, it's not put it on the top. Well, what did we expect? Now what we need to do, and this is going to be a cool thing to learn. It took me a fair amount of time back in the day to learn how to do this. I've been on a long journey with all my Blender days. Right, so what we want to do is we want to assign this top face only to be this second material. And this is pretty easy to do. What you have to do is with the cube selected, press tab. Whoa, what did that do? Now you can't click on anything else. We've gone into edit mode. This is where you can edit the shape. I could change this so that the cube is not a cube, but whatever the hell kind of shape that is. I'm going to Control Z on that. Right, so in edit mode, I'm going to have to explain how edit mode works now a little bit. So when you're editing a 3D shape, like this cube right here, there's three things really that you can edit on a 3D shape. You notice how I clicked on this point here, this little point that's like the corner. If I press this button, you get the widget up. So you can see the little things here, and I can move it around like that. So there's three things you can edit on this thing. You can edit the corner points, which are called vertexes. I believe they're called vertexes. Vertexes, yes they are. And I could click on this one here and edit that one as well. Make a really crazy shape. Or you can, if you click this second button here, you can select lines and move the line up, which can be useful. You see right there, we've made like a really low poly kind of, it's almost like a building, really. It's kind of like a building in my opinion. And we can do that. Or we can press this last button and click on entire shapes and move them around. So that's the three things that you can do in edit mode. Now, essentially, if we was to move any of these, we're just sort of scaling it, but we're scaling it by not from the middle and expanding both ways, but just on one side. But we're not actually scaling it. We're making it a bigger shape on from one side. So we'll click on this top shape here. Now, what we need to do is just make the other material beyond that. Now, you may have noticed when we went into edit mode, these three things appeared here. If we press tab and get out of edit mode, oh yeah, to get out of edit mode, you have to also be over the 3D window. Those buttons have disappeared. We're going to tab back in. So basically, with this top face selected, click on your second material and click assign. And there you go. You see, we've got this thing here. Now this is a really chunky spotlight. It's mega chunk, and we don't want it to be that big. So I want to scale it down. And there's the object properties section here where you can do just that. I'm going to use this to put in like some exact figures. So if we assume the tallness of it is correct and it's 1, we want to make it smaller in the other two directions. So I'm going to type in 0.1. Ooh. And then 0.1 like that. And now we've got, it's kind of like a light stick right here. Looks pretty good. I'm going to move this to be near or even in the square things. You can just about see them there. Actually, I'll put it kind of in front. Now is a very good time to press F12 to see how it looks when rendered. Now I've added in some more emission stuff here. So if you're in Blender cycles, it may take a little while. I kind of like the look of this, but it seems, I don't know, something that seems a little weird about it. I don't know. That is too far down. That's it. The shape is mostly outside. So I want to have it so there's a big shape in the middle and then symmetrically on either side it sort of fades away. It sort of like scales down a little bit, which we're going to do about now. All right, so I'm going to move this to be mostly in. Sort of like that. I don't know if it's too bright. Is it too bright? Is it too bright? I don't know. I'll leave it as it is. If you want to adjust the brightness of it or anything, feel free to go ahead and try it. So now I'm going to do the thing where we make copies of it and move it around. So I'm going to press Z, go into wireframe mode, which is right here. and we're going to be moving stuff around. You think that these tiles in the background are getting in your way? You want to get rid of them now that you've set them up correctly? You see up here where it says plane? That was the plane object. Just click this eye. It's gone. But we've still got the camera selected, so it'll still be rendered. If I press F12, you can see it's still there, but it's not in the viewport. Pretty crazy, huh? So we've got this grid here, and we want to evenly space out these cubes. So we could use the array modifier like we did before, but what I'm actually going to do is manually place them now that we've set up one spotlight correctly. So to make a duplicate of an object in Blender, you hold down Shift and D to duplicate it. And now we've made a copy of the object. But I don't want to be moving it around manually. I want to move it precisely. So instead of left clicking to place it, I'm going to right click if you didn't do that. Wait, did it get rid of it altogether? Oh, it got rid of it altogether. Right, so Shift D. Instead of left clicking to place it, I'm going to right click to keep it exactly where the first one was. So we already mentioned that you can hold down Control and drag that widget around to move it on a sort of grid thing like this. We already went through that. But we're moving it in pretty small steps here. You may have noticed when you zoom out, if you zoom out far enough, those little squares in the middle disappear and you're left with just big squares. If I was to hold down Control now and move it, it moves a bigger step. So it moves it on this grid. And as we were to zoom out on this to a bigger grid, if I was to move it now, it would move it a massive amount. Like it's over there now. It's a massive distance away, but I'm going to undo that because actually that's where it is. So zoom out till it's about sort of like where this level is. And then Control D and just drag it to the next one. And not Control D, Shift D. And then Control and move it across. How many do we want? And I'll do one more. And Control and drag it like that. Okay. But I also want it on the other side. So I'm going to Shift D and duplicate and move it around. I'm going to Shift D and duplicate and hold down Control and move it this way. How many did we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. So we need another 2 on this side. And do the same thing there. So now we've got them at either side. Hopefully. And I'm going to press F12 right now and give it a little look. And you can use the time while we're finding out what this looks like if you're still doing that to catch up a little bit. Remember, Shift and D to duplicate, then immediately right click, and then hold down Control and drag it along to either side. Hopefully won't take that long. And that's looking pretty good. I must admit, it's looking sort of all right. It almost, I don't know, it looks okay. It's, like I said, this isn't about making a fantastic first thing. This is about getting you some practice at using Blender. Now, I want to have these scaling off, like this one and this one, to be scaled down so they're shorter. And the next ones are shorter and the next 2 are shorter. So you can transform 2 different objects at the same time. If you want to select 2 things at the same time, click the one on this side, hold down Shift, and click the next one. There you go, you see? You've selected both of them. So I want to scale them on the Z axis, this up and down one. I want to scale them on the Z axis only. So I'm going to do SZ 0.75 to make it 75%. And that's made it smaller. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the next 2. Click one, click the next, and press SZ. And this time it will scale down like 50%, so 0.5, like that. And then on these, oh yeah, the last 4 are going to be all scaled the same. And these, guess what, are going to be SZ 0.25, like that. And now it's got that it's got a kind of cool effect about it, where it sort of fades off a little bit. You could maybe, you know, if you wanted to, have it the other way around. So it's like a curve inwards. Because it does look like a little bit of a curve. But then that's looking all right. In my opinion. You know what? Now that I've done all this, you see how many copies of the object we've got now? This spotlight, there's all these different versions of it. So this is getting full now, and we have to scroll up and down. I want to move the camera, so I'm going to click on the camera. I want to move it down a little bit, because we're about to put in that mirrored floor, right? Which is going to be pretty fun. So we want a little bit more. We can see past the bottoms of these spotlights now, which is not good, but it will become all right in a minute. And also, this plane, this background wall, that, if I press numpad 0 to have a look, is a little, this one does want to go all the way down. So I'm going to click on this bottom corner. You can click on any of these, I think. Let me just check. Yeah, you can. I don't have to click on the original one. I'm going to move them down like that a little bit so that they're fully right to the edges. And if not, just go into your modifiers if it's left you with a bit of a gap and increase these numbers a little bit in one of these, whichever way it is. Whichever way it is. So now, the tiles, I'm going to call them tiles. Fuck it. The tiles now are all the way to the bottom. So to quit out of the render mode, I should have explained that before. You press escape, but you can also click in the corner, on the little X, like anything. But I'm just so used to pressing escape on it now. So last things last, we want to add a plane. So I'm going to Shift A to add and add in a plane, which is right here. And it's got to cover the whole of the bottom screen. So right to the edges. So I'm going to press S to scale it. Now, because this is a plane, it's just a flat square. It's only going to scale across and this way. It's not going to scale up because it's not 3D. It's flat. So actually, I'm going to scale it until the back corners. These back corners here are well outside of the edges of the frame. Otherwise, there's a chance that it might, although this is lined up here, it might be that we can, when we render, that we might be able to see where the fall off is. In fact, can we? It'd be better if I could demonstrate that. Because technically, it might not be lit up enough and the gap in between things might not be enough. But technically, we can see the corner of that plane there. And even if you can't really see it, I'm going to escape from that. I just like it to be perfect. But I have noticed that there isn't much of a gap in this wall of planes right here. So I'm actually gonna, from having a look at that, so I'm actually going to go in and where it says the factor X and factor Y of 1.2, I'm going to increase these a little bit to be 1.4. And now it goes way off that side. And it's not lined up. But it doesn't have to be lined up. It just has to fill all this. But I am, just because I've got OCD, I'm going to move it around that way. Like that. And now there's a bit more of a gap in between. And where is that plane? Okay, so I've just gone to render it again. And now I'm going to... Where is that plane? If I go into solid mode, we'll be able to see. The plane, I'm going to click on the blue thing to move it up. It's outside of the view. Now, if you've got, like me, I've mouse wheeled in to zoom in there, by the way. If you've got, like me, where your end spotlights, the bottom of them is visible, you want to move this up and just click and drag it to fine-tune move it until you start to see the bottom of those last things disappear. And again, as just to remind you of what we said earlier, you can G and Z to move it up or down as well. So now we've got we've got a bit of a floor that's visible there. But I didn't want it to be a flat floor. I mean, if you want it to be a flat floor, there you go, you're done. Job is a good one. But I wanted it to be a sort of like a fractured mirrored surface. So I'm going to go into rendered mode. In fact, I'm now going to go back into Eevee mode and have a look at it. Okay, it doesn't look as posh because Eevee doesn't have where the light is actually properly emitted. But you can fake that. If you click where it says bloom right here, you've kind of faked it a little bit there. The text is a little bit not very visible. So I'm going to click on the text, go into the material thing, and change its emission strength to be maybe 3? All right, I have a feeling I'm going to F12 in Eevee mode now. And it has a bit of a weird look about it, but that's okay. We've got this bottom object here. I just wanted to use Eevee for this bit because we already turned on the screen space reflections earlier. If you haven't, that's a big hint that you should do that right now. And I'm going to click on this flat plane at the bottom, and it doesn't have a material, so I'm going to give it one. And I'm going to call it MTL. Ground? I'm just going to call it ground. I don't know what else to call it, so I'm going to go with that. And now we've got all these options on it, and I'm going to turn off the specularness. I'm going to turn up the metallicness, so it's actually, even in Eevee, it's like a mirror. But I'm going to turn the roughness down, so it's properly like a mirror, like that. And now it looks pretty cool. And yeah, that does look pretty cool. In my opinion, that looks pretty cool. This is all just a perfect mirror. But I could also roughness, make it a bit blurry. I'm going to leave it as it is. We're going to have something fancy down here. Now I'm going to press Z and go into wireframe mode. So we have this plane and it's flat. And if you want a perfectly mirrored thing, you're good. You are good. But I am also going to I'm going to introduce you to adding faces now. We did briefly touch on this earlier in the first half where I was rambling on and making that Richard cube, you know, the one that was like a netting of a web. It was almost like a fishing net, but a cube shape. So what we need to do is we need to add more faces to this. So do we have to be in edit mode? We do have to be in edit mode. So we need to go into edit mode again to edit this shape. So press tab with this ground thing selected, Control and E to bring up the edge menu here. Now there's a lot of options in here and I'm not going to explain all of them, but there's one here called subdivide. And if you know what subdivision is, it's exactly what it says. Now because that big prompt appeared, you may not have seen that down here appears a little menu. And you can click to open it. And now that's going to be very annoying because that's exactly over this menu here. Number of cuts is right here. So click and drag this up. And basically you can see there what it's doing. It's cutting that one big cube up into small ones. I'm going to change this to be 100. Like that. And then will that be enough? It probably will be enough. So most of the object is hidden. I'll make a judgment call in a minute on whether or not to keep it like that. So we've got all these extra faces that it's put in. It's sliced it up into little cuts of different ones. But here's the thing. If we get out of edit mode now, no, I nearly deleted the object, and go into rendered mode, still looks the same. Still looks the same. And the reason for that is, although it's been sliced up into all these different cubes, they're lined up next to each other exactly right, and they're all facing the same direction. So even though they are all different faces now, because they're all exactly in the same position, looking at exactly the same way, you can't tell. So what we want to do is, oh yeah, I've gone out of edit mode now. We want to tab back into edit mode on this object. You'll know if it's edit mode because something will change. If you have your mouse over here, it won't tab you into edit mode. You have to be in here like this. And so I'm going to go to, which menu is it? Is it mesh? It is mesh. I'm going to go up to this mesh menu here that appears only in edit mode. And I'm going to go to transform and randomize. Now, what is this? This is exactly what I thought it was going to do. Oh, wait. It's made a mess. Making a mess is what it's done. I'm going to go back to wireframe mode. Right, this is here. Is there any way to make this a different position? Maybe I ought to, because I'm going to be using that a lot in the future. Hold on, let me just, settings, X position. All right. Fixed position. What about if I made it bottom? That's just going to put it over there. All right then, fixed position. Let me move this across so this is out of the way. Eventually, because we're going to be, that's all right. That's basically almost in the middle. In fact, if I make it 576, I'm pretty damn sure it will be right in the middle. There we go. It's not in the middle. I'm wrong. What's 1920 divided by 2? I should know this, but it's not 576. And I don't know where this point is in the thing. But that looks like it's about centered, and that will do. Right then. So, we've got this randomized thing here. Now, if you click... When you apply an effect from up here, and it brings up this little box here, if you click off it, then that's it. The effect is applied. It's like when you're moving something around. If you left click off it, it applies the thing. So I'm going to Control Z to undo a couple of times to undo that, and we'll do it again. Mesh, transform, randomize. Looks like crap, but we've got these options down here, and we want to adjust them. So the amount of noise, it's obviously moved every point in this shape, all of the different corners of each face, all over the place, and it's too much. So we want to turn the amount down so it looks a bit more like it did before. That looks okay, but I also want to turn on this normal thing here, which will make it look sort of a bit like a low poly landscape from computer games way back in the day, which looks pretty cool. And that's the effect that we're going for. So I've done that. I've changed normal to 1 and amount to 0.01. And hopefully now when we press F5 and render, you can sort of see what's happening there. All right. I can still click on this, can I? All right. I think 0.01 might be too much, so I'm going to type in a variable. You can click on this one at the top to type in a thing. I'm going to make it 0.005. So it's half as much as it was before. And press F12 without clicking off it. That looks a little better. Hold on. So what I want to do now is I'm going to press escape off that render. I'm going to press tab. Going to select the camera, which is up here. I'm going to press numpad 0 to look through from the camera. And I'll probably turn on rendered mode here. Actually, we've got quite a nice little effect going off here. Now, this what we've just done on a plane right here is if you've got a camera that's moving at some speed in some directions, it can look like it can to the human eye, almost if your camera's moving at a certain speed, look like it's waves, like a digital sort of like ocean surface or something, which is pretty cool. So what I want to do is I want to change on the camera the focal length, which is basically the zoom, and drag this down a little bit till it gets a bit like that. And we've got an image there. Key press OSD. Oh my God. I forgot to turn that off, so it's not been showing the right keys, and I didn't even notice for minutes at a time. Now it's there. But I think that is probably about good enough. It's not exactly like as the original was before. I've gone with purple rather than the green we had before, and we see a bit more of that. But that looks all right. And you can also render properties, switch it over to the proper ray tracing if you want to, and see how it looks. Right, there's a little step that it does. We mentioned this earlier, where it denoises the image at the end of the render, and I'm going to untick that because it freezes everything up for a good long time. So I'm going to turn that off now, and let me just have a look. Are we dropping any frames? We are not dropping any frames with the Cycles GPU renderer, and that's excellent. So we've got that there, and that's kind of like a little logo design which we've done there. Now, feel free, using anything that we've talked about today, to go and have a little play around and do some looking into stuff. We've gone through a lot today, so I think that's probably a good place to leave it. The text is sort of... Can I make it even brighter? Can I make the text like 30 emission brightness in here? All right, that's maybe a little too much. Okay, I'm rendering it inside. Yeah, that's a little too much. It's so shiny now that it's hard to actually see what it is. It's not that hard. It's maybe a little too hard. And if you don't like that, if I'm pressing escape to get out of the render, if you don't like that blurry reflection on the back, you can go into the plane wall, which is right here. And remember how we said it was affected by the roughness. You can make it so it's a perfect mirror. Although if you do make it a perfect mirror, beware that there won't be any shininess. There won't be any sort of like emission brightness being shaded onto it because it's a perfect mirror. So it's just reflecting all the light. So that's what happens if you have metallic as absolutely full on. So I'm going to have it as being not quite full. The roughness, do we see it now? Oh no, it's got me trying to do a variable. Okay. How's this look in comparison to everything else? I can zoom in and out. It looks okay. It looks okay. Like I said, you can use whatever color you like. We've got the text object up here. You could change it to be, if you want it pink, you've got it pink. Just by changing the emission there with the color selector. Of course, that is a bit too much pink and purple. But, you know, if you're after a pink logo, you got it right there, haven't you? So, I'm going to say that that's just about it for this time. Feel free to, with all the knowledge that you've got, go away and attempt some stuff and see what you can get up to. That was just introducing you to a few of the basics of Blender. So, in the next video, we're going to be working on 2 overlay art projects. Where and what have we got? And these overlay art projects, one's going to be simple and maybe take us about an hour, maybe an hour and a half. The second one's going to be much more... It's going to be a much more detailed overlay look at. And in case you're not aware, let me go over to the thing. Right, so this was the intro movie. We had them, right, basically around here. We've got the logo. We've done the text logo. We haven't done that. Right, okay, we're going to have like some ones that look a little bit like that, which is basically just some little things. You know how you have stuff like most recent subscriber? We're going to have like little elements like that, like each of those shapes there. It's something that you could just write most recent subscriber on using the, not stream elements, using the, oh God, what's it called now? The stream labels, that's it. I finally remembered the name. It's just the right amount of pink and purple. You're wrong. You're wrong. So we've got that one, which is very simple. As you may be able to just see that it's basically just a couple of shapes. And that's all it is. It's basically just some adjusted planes. But there is a transparent background on them. And then after that, we're going to be working on... Oh, it's maybe a little hard to see what's going off on that second one. Let's try let it run again. I'm wrong, of course, my bad. So yeah, first one, pretty simple. Second one, a bit more fancy. You know, a little more streamery, if you know what I mean. So that should be pretty good. That is going to build off the things that we've learned today, which is to do with, like, you know, editing corners of shapes in edit mode and doing all kinds of things. So go away, get some practice, and a special homework. If anyone is not on the Discord, you should be on the Discord already. I'll post a link to it in the Twitch chat. A special homework for whoever wants to. Let's see if using the abilities that you've so far got and found, you can design a pizza inside of Blender. Design a pizza inside of Blender. And if you do, on the Discord, on the Teabag Society Discord, we have an art channel. And post your results in there. You don't have to, but you can do. And I think that could be pretty fun. So let's see what people can come up with. And it should be pretty fun. And you can show off all your new skills to the entire Discord. And also you can see on the right-hand side some of the things that we're going to be doing. I'm not necessarily sure at this point if the 2 overlay art projects, like the second one, which is frozen on the screen here, might be a little... It might take a little too long. Because I remember it took some time to get this stuff set up. But I'll like I've been doing recently, I will dry run through it in my own time to figure out how long it will take. But I want to make sure these tutorial videos are no longer than about 3 to 3.5 hours. So that's going to be what we're going to be doing then. And I'm going to go back here. And now we're just left with the image that we've made up. Okay, so it didn't turn out quite like it did in the beginning, but that's how it turned out. So, what do I normally do after the stream? Oh, I could probably raid someone. So, all that being said, I hope you enjoyed all that, and I am going to press this button. Yeah, there we go. Press that button. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed. I will be putting the video on the YouTube playlist, Raid These Nuts. Present them. Okay, let's see if anyone's live right about now. Holy shit, what's happening on Nicky's stream? He's like got 33 viewers. That's pretty cool. Let's have a look. Who else is live? Is there any other cool people live? Who's this guy? I can't remember if I know this guy or not. Do I know this guy? He's not playing the right game. He's maybe just changed his game. I don't know. Alright. I'll tell you what. We'll go and raid Nicky. I don't raid him often enough. I'll catch up on the YouTube. Sorry, Mr. Chiro, just got back from work. That's perfectly fine. We're gonna go and raid our boy Nicky Madison over there. You all, well, if you don't know him, he's a cool streamer, and he's currently having a right time. He's got quite a few viewers going off. I don't know where he's got them from, but maybe has he been raided? Oh, I can't see far enough back. I'll check in his admin thing. I watch VOD also. I will be putting these up on the YouTube. It's no problem. So yeah, thank you very much. If anyone has any comments, leave them underneath the video. And we are going to go and raid Mr. Nicholas Madison. That's not his real name. I know his real name, but I'm not saying what it is. Ta-ta for now. The heart wall command didn't work. Oh, I forgot to turn something on. I'll turn you on.